everybody. Welcome to the Township of Howell's Planning Board meeting for Thursday, December 5th, 2024. Eileen, opening statement, please.
I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 5th, 2024, a copy of said notice was emailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger. Second, on January 5th, 2024, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 5th, 2024, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township 77. Thank you. And if I could just make a side note, please make sure you turn your mics on or you speak into the mics because we're having trouble picking people up on the audio and videos after the meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cristiano?
Present.
Mr. Greenfield is excused. Mr. Leggio?
Present.
Mr. Mercer?
Here.
Mr. Tannenhouse is excused. Mr. Withers is excused. Mr. Rebel?
Here.
Councilwoman Fisher is excused. Mr. Carbonic?
Here.
And Chairman Husser.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and afterwards a moment of silence for our troops, both here and abroad.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, the first item on our agenda, approval of minutes for the regular meeting of September 19th, 2024. Eligible voters, Mr. Leggio, Mr. Mercer, Mr. Rebel, Mr. Carbonic, and myself. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Mr. Leggio, in a second.
Second.
Mr. Mercer.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Mr. Rebel?
Yes.
Mr. Carbonic?
Yes.
And Chairman Husser?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, any correspondence?
I did send out an email with meeting dates for next year and asked for anyone to look them over and give me any comments. I also left you one this evening at the dais. I don't know if anybody wants to discuss them tonight or if you want to leave until the next meeting. It's up to you.
Yeah, we'll peruse and
Okay.
get back to you. Is everybody good on that class?
No, Mr. Withers and Mr. Carbonic still have to take their stormwater training. I'll send you another email with the link tomorrow, and not tomorrow, Monday. And if you could just take the class, it's like 45 minutes.
It's the best 45 minutes of your life. Right?
And then just email me back that you took the class, because we have to have that for our compliance.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the only other item I have, I also emailed ordinance 2448 to the members this week. That was introduced by the council, and that's up for public hearing and adoption before our next meeting, so we need to comment for consistency with the master plan.
Okay, that's not on the agenda, though?
No, that's just correspondence.
Okay. Do we have to vote on it tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
And Jen's going to tell you what it is.
Jennifer.
Good evening. So we have ordinance 2448, which is really just the inclusion of 2 definitions, one for boarding house, one for rooming house. And I would submit to the board that clarification and cleanup of the definition is consistent with our master plan. So I would recommend that the board act on a finding of consistency with the master plan.
Any questions? I will entertain a motion.
I'll make motion for approval.
That's consistent.
Consistent with the master plan.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Mercer for the second.
Thank you. Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Mr. Rebel?
Yes.
Mr. Carbonic?
Yes.
And Chairman Husser?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have on correspondence.
Thanks, Eileen. Resolutions, case number SD 3005, Stanley Doman. It's a resolution granting extension of time. Eligible voters, Mr. Cristiano, Mr. Leggio, Mr. Mercer, Mr. Rebel, and myself. Do I have a motion to memorialize?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Rebel and Mr. Cristiano.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Mr. Rebel?
Yes.
And Chairman Husser?
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolutions memorialized.
Okay, and the next is resolutions, case number SD 3015, Averhome Weinman. It's a resolution denying preliminary and final major subdivision with ancillary bulk variance relief. Eligible voters, Mr. Cristiano, Mr. Leggio, Mr. Mercer, Mr. Rebel, and that is it. Do I have a motion?
I'll make motion.
Mr. Cristiano, do I have a second? Second, Mr. Leggio.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
And Mr. Rebel?
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolutions memorialized. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to submission waivers. That's for case number SD 3016, Benzion Young Grease LLC, for the preliminary and final major subdivision with ancillary variance and design waiver relief.
Good evening, Mr.
Good
Chair.
evening.
Board members, Jared Pape on behalf of the applicant. As mentioned, we're here seeking submission waivers. Did receive CME's November 13th letter. We're happy to defer to Ms. Newman, who outlined the requested waivers set forth in the letter.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as was stated, we have a November 13th, 2024 review letter. I know the submission waivers appear like a lot. This is classified as a major subdivision, but it's only the creation of 2 lots. So for those reasons, I take no exception to the granting of these waivers for the purposes of deeming the application complete.
Got it. Okay, any questions? Simple. All right. I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Mr. Mercer, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Leggio.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Mr. Rebel?
Yes.
Mr. Carbonic?
Yes.
And Chairman Husser?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, first application this evening, case number SP 1113-271 Adelphia LLC. It's for a preliminary and final major subdivision and preliminary and final major site plan. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, John Jackson on behalf of the applicant. Since the last time we were here, the board made a recommendation that we make access between the 2 properties. You'll recall that we had, basically 2 halves, and the board thought it would be much more efficient to be able to allow access. And in speaking to Mr. Morchek, who's here this evening, that's actually better for their internal operations because it will enable them to move the very heavy granite and limestone in between the 2 places. Mr. John Ray, traffic engineer, has indicated to me that cuts down on traffic counts, internal circulation, so it's a great move. With your permission, I would like to call Christine Nazaro-Cafone, our planner. Although we've made minor revisions to the plan, I think she can address those and we can go efficiently forward and just have Christine testify. I have our engineer, I have our architect, I have our traffic consultant, I have our owner. Everybody's here if there's questions, but our plan is to just allow Ms. Cafone to go through with her narrative. We think that will keep it sharp and focused.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you. So if I can hand out my PowerPoint and you can put it on the screen. I have copies.
I got it.
If I may do that while she starts.
Before we start, everyone that's sitting tonight is eligible. Mr. Carbonic has certified, so.
Oh, I don't.
Mr. Cucchiaro, I don't recall if I
Oh,
was
wait,
sworn
I think
in
I-
last month. I know I was.
We'll do it again, just in
Okay.
case. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
It's Christine Cofone, C-O-F-O-N-E. Business address is 52 Reckless Place, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701. Testifying tonight as a licensed professional planner. I've testified in here in Howell on many, many times and before hundreds of other planning and zoning boards throughout the state. I teach planning and zoning courses for the Rutgers Center for Government Services. I am a court-appointed affordable housing special adjudicator, and my licenses are current and valid.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you as well, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Erica Phone's custom is she prepares an outline, and in lieu of answering questions and back and forth, I would just like her to give her analysis. And if I can just, when Ms. Urbano gets a moment to put our PowerPoint, then she could show you where we've done our connection.
Well, good thing it's me. It's me.
Do it if we can let you go.
I think I have to change the display settings.
So we can certainly just, I guess, start talking about them while they're passing them out, so the board can understand what we did. You know, I was here at the last hearing, we put in a lot of testimony, and then we decided at close to the quitting time to adjourn so that we heard the comments of the board, and I think we did a few things that hopefully addressed your concerns and are going to make this a little bit more palatable of application. The one thing we did, which I think is probably the most significant to the functionality of the application, is we made it so that you wouldn't have to leave the site to transfer between the two buildings. We heard that comment from the board, so we were able to make sure that we were able to have free-flowing access between the two buildings. That adds what I would consider a de minimis amount of impervious coverage. I think our engineer told me it was about 100 square feet, so not a substantial increase, and certainly nothing that, one, caused us to change our stormwater management design, or two, put us into any type of variance situation with regard to impervious coverage. So we were able to accomplish that, which again avoids the trucks going out onto the street if they need to go to the adjoining roadway network. The other thing we did was we were always providing a 50-foot space, if you will, distance between our eastern property line that we share with Fazio and our building. But what we did was we substantially increased the landscaping in that area. We have it's not even just a double staggered row of plantings. We added dozens of plantings in that area to create what's really more like a natural buffer. Now, if you recall when we were here last, Mr. Ward had talked to you, and when he was testifying, he told you that we got some direction from the Environmental Commission that they wanted to have a clear path along that eastern section where our buffer is essentially, so that any animals that wanted to, use the property to traverse and get through could do that. And I can tell you that with the design of our landscape plan, even though we've substantially increased the number of plantings in that area, we believe that we will still meet the Environmental Commission's goal to allow for animals to traverse along that eastern portion while meeting the intent of the ordinance, which is to have buffering. Now, the ordinance requires that we take our setbacks from the buffer area because it's a major subdivision. So I would say that this is a commercial application, right? Yes, it is a major subdivision, but that is a technicality. So I would say we are meeting the intent of the ordinance by providing a 50-foot buffer. The issue is now our building technically sits right up on that buffer. Because it's a major subdivision, we would have to take the building setback from that buffer line.
And Christine, can you please, Ms. Cofone, can you please address how narrowly we're considered a major subdivision? I mean, is that significant here that we,
It is, and that's why I called it a technicality. I mean, so it's really a technicality. And if the board recalls, there was some question when we first filed this application if we were or were not a major subdivision. The only reason we're a major subdivision is because of the number of lots involved. And the way your ordinance defines subdivision, if it involves, I believe the way the structure of the ordinance is, if it involves more than a certain number of lots, it's a major subdivision. So it truly is a technicality running from the genesis of definition of subdivisions in your ordinance as to why we need to even have that. Otherwise, we would just have to provide the 50-foot. It wouldn't have to be cumulative. We wouldn't have to take our setback off of that buffer. So very technical in nature, and I would say a substantial increase in plantings, with dozens of plantings being introduced into that eastern buffer. And again, there's a major industrial user on the other side of that buffer, right? Fazio sits on the other side of that buffer, so we are providing a buffer to another industrial user. But nonetheless, I know I certainly have been here enough to know the importance of buffers in this community, so we went back to the drawing board and did our homework there. The other thing we did is we added on the architectural plans a designation for use as storage areas for materials by the site user. If you had an opportunity to either go by the site, in preparing for this application, had an opportunity to tour through the site. I mean, if you want to feel tiny, go take a stroll through the building, because they have enormous slabs of marble that they use there, and they store them. So we have those areas identified as storage area on the proposed buildings. So that's what we did essentially to come back and try to respond to some of the concerns we heard last month. It does not trigger any additional relief. So Mr. Ward went through the relief extensively at the last hearing. We do need another technical variance for he did pull on the southeastern portion of the property. He got our stormwater management structure out of that basin, but we do need a variance still, because on the southern portion of the property where we have a driveway, we have an engineering structure, a stormwater structure under that proposed driveway. So, right, if you see our southern driveway coming off of Squonkam Yellowbrook, there is a stormwater management structure under that driveway. So technically, it's in your buffer area, but it's underneath the driveway. And unless you were pretty familiar with these plans, you wouldn't know it was there, because it is under the ground and under the driveway. So, and the other variance that we're asking for is for the two signs. And Mr. Ward talked about, he showed you the location of those. They're at our two entrance driveways. We are proposing a sign on each of those entrance driveways. And I think given the size of this property and given the fact that it can be accessed from two separate and distinct roadways, the additional signage would be appropriate. The other relief that we were seeking, in addition to the stormwater management and the buffer, was for the two pylon signs, was to allow for the driveway width of 40 feet in excess where the 24 is permitted, the 24 feet in width. And Mr. Ward testified that was necessary for proper circulation. And further, that despite the fact that our driveway was a little wider, we had no coverage variances, and we're seeking no coverage variances, so the site could certainly handle the additional impervious coverage. Another waiver that we were asking was for the landscaping in front of the loading areas. That's just not a practical function of the site, but we are providing landscaping certainly, on the ends of the loading areas, so they will be screened. It will certainly be a filtered view from the screen or from the street level, so we are providing for a mitigating condition there. We are asking for, I think we're continuing to ask for the relief to have a flat roof instead of a gabled roof. But because we are proposing a parapet, it will hide the flat roof as well as hiding our HVAC. So I think we're meeting the intent of the ordinance there. And we also asked for relief for the parking to be greater than 300 feet to the door. That's, again, just given the functionality of this building and the linear nature of the building. Some of our parking spaces are not going to be within 300 feet of the door. And then we're asking additionally for relief that on industrial and commercial applications, a 30-foot wide circulation aisle needs to be maintained for emergency purposes. So that's a little bit of a conflict in the ordinance, because in one place we're asking for relief for it to go to 40. I can tell you that where we're less than 30 feet, that is not where trucks are going. That is located, that is isolated to the passenger car sections of our site. And Mr. Ward pointed those out and testified to them last month, but I can tell you that that relief is where the passenger cars are located. And then I think we are seeking a waiver for the lighting as well, and Mr. Ward testified to that last month as well, and that we are dark sky compliant, and that the lighting levels allow us to minimize the amount of light poles and make it a more efficient plan. So, in a site plan of this size and scale, I would say, in my opinion, I think the relief is reasonable to really the functionality of the site, right? Most of the relief that you heard functions to the size of the driveways and the ability for the site to function properly. So I think the board can grant the variance relief under the C1 and C2 section of the statute. We are dealing with an existing building here that we are trying to internalize some of the this site, the part of the site that is used for outdoor storage, that gets improved, so the condition dramatically improves of how this use is going to perform for the curb appeal of it. So I think the board can look at certainly criteria M, which talks about an efficient use of the land. I think the board can look at criteria G, sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses. This is an as-of-right use on this site. Legislatively, the governing body decided that this use is appropriate here, so I think criteria G is advanced. Criteria I, which talks about a desirable visual environment, is also advanced given the fact that the new building gives the applicant the ability to, one, like I said with criteria M, use the site more efficiently, but two, create a desirable visual environment, and that the new building allows for many of the things that occur outside to go inside. So statutorily, we would only have to advance one or more of the purposes of the municipal land use law to substantiate the variance relief under C2. I think that those three, G, I, and M, are all advanced. And I think as far as the negative criteria, there is no substantial detriment, right? The land use law does not require you ask us to demonstrate that there's no detriments at all. Just that the benefits of the grant of the variance outweigh any detriment. When you consider the fact that in Howell, in the reexamination report in 2023, one of the stated objectives in that is to evaluate the potential for economic and rehabilitation plans in strategic locations and where appropriate. So I think that this is a great location. This site is really sandwiched in between two other industrial users, and I think it certainly takes advantage of the site attributes and to make an efficient site layout, and that we are able to mitigate any impacts with the landscaping and architectural plans that are proposed by the applicant. So I do believe, in my opinion, that we meet our burden of proof with respect to the grant of the variance relief and the waivers associated in conjunction with this application.
Can you please just show the board, maybe we can zoom in where we've made the interconnectivity and how that works, and why you believe that's appropriate for the site and the benefit? On the colored renderings, that would be a good, where you, right there, you can just zoom in.
We may or may not be able to do that, like,
All right, well,
Okay.
oh, wait,
can
hold on,
actually-
hold on.
great, there it is.
Right.
So, you can see, it looks like a little driveway opening right there. There we
Yes.
go, thank
It's
you.
almost in the center of the site. So, and what it does is it allows, the user from one portion of the site to the other to traverse, truck traffic or any other need to get through the one side or the other, clearly without having the ability to go to any of the adjoining roadway network, which was the concern as we understood it from the board last month.
And Mrs. Zarocafone, you have spoken with our client, Joseph Warchek, who's here this evening. You've been in the site, you've walked what they do, right?
I have been inside as well as outside, yes. I've toured the building on the site and have walked the site with the client, with the
And
applicant.
This has very large slabs of, I'll call it stone and material and equipment, and it just takes up a lot of room.
It's enormous. Like I said, if you want to feel small, take a walk through that building because they're very enormous slabs of marble and there are a lot of them in there.
And that, okay. So that's all the questions I have for our planner, and that would be our case as well, Mr. Chairman. Unless you'd like to hear from Mr. Morchak to describe the operations further, or more information from Mr. Ray, or from Mr. Ward, or from our architect as well.
Thank you. What's up, John?
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a couple
Of
questions?
course, Jen.
I'm sorry, Christine, did you talk about the building height?
I didn't because we've eliminated that variance.
Okay, so that's no longer a
Nope, we are
variance.
not seeking a variance.
Okay, so
for
what
building
is the height now? Is it the 44.75? Because it's been a couple of different things, and I just want to make sure we're clear.
I know that. Let me just look at my notes.
Mr. Alfieri is distracting our architect, so what's our...
Is that the intent of the flat roof instead of the gable roof to keep within that?
It was 44 and change, Jennifer.
Like 44.75?
44.57 I have
That's
in
what I
my
have,
notes.
okay, so it's less than the 45 feet that's permitted?
Yes.
And that includes to the top of the parapet?
I mean, I'll have our architect confirm that, but
Okay, so I'm going to assume that that's the case for now. They'll have to check that. Because we do include the parapet in the overall building height. So if it's above the 45, it still would be considered a C variance, but I just wanted to put that on the record. But before we get to that, they can look into that. a couple of things that we identified in our letter, which was, we deferred to Shari with respect to the appropriateness of the landscaping within the 50 feet. Laura has indicated that Shari, she has a couple comments, but she is satisfied with the landscaping in that 50 feet.
Great.
I also don't disagree about the testimony regarding the requirement for a major subdivision to have the 50 feet and then plus the setback from the 50 feet. That is really intended for a residential major subdivision. If you guys recall, there was a lot of concern way back when where they would put the 50-foot buffer and then there'd be like no usable backyards in the lots. So the setbacks off that buffer for a residential backyard was intended to make sure that those residents have a place to put a pool, a swing set, and what have you. It really wasn't envisioned for commercial industrial major subdivision, so I don't take exception to that. And uncharacteristically, I also don't take exception to the basin in the buffer only because it's under the drive. If it was elsewhere, I would have a problem with it, but that area already is maintaining allowable disturbance. Obviously, you're allowed to go in and out of a site, so as long as it remains within the confines of that, I don't take exception, God bless you, to that at all. There were two other things that, I don't know, I apologize if you said it and I missed it. One was, I know you talked about the 2 signs, but there also was relief in our letter for landscaping around the base of the signs. I don't know if you testified to that, but we would ask that you.
I would think we could do that. I mean, I don't think we need to ask
You
that
would
really.
landscape around the base of the signs.
We
and
can work
we'll-
with your office
Perfect.
or
Or Shari.
Shari's office to do
Okay.
that.
And then the only other thing I have is we have a variance required for the fence. And I apologize, I wasn't physically here when you guys were here the last time, so I'm not sure if you're still proposing my ever-favorite chain link fence.
I believe we have agreed to do white vinyl.
Okay.
And at 6 feet.
At 6 feet, so
My
that's
notes reflect that we eliminated the relief and that we are not doing the chain link.
Well,
because-
if it's in the front, I don't take exception to it, but if it's in the front yard at 6 foot solid, you would need relief for the 6 foot solid in the front yard because, which I'm assuming is for security purposes, correct?
Yes.
So a 4 foot, 50% open, in your opinion, would provide less security?
Well, I think the chain link or the vinyl would clearly be a better zoning alternative because I think aesthetically it's going to look much better and be more secure.
I agree, but the height too is 6 feet, where in front yard we typically
4.
require 4.
Then we would need relief for
I
that.
think that for security purposes, as long as you can commit on the record, and whether this is you, Mr. Jackson, or you, Christine, that the 6 foot high solid fence is not going to impede like a site triangle or any kind of distance for the safe ingress and egress to the site.
We'll make certain that it does not, and we'll stipulate to that.
So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Laura?
And then, Mr. Chairman, if I could, obviously, I have nothing from an engineering perspective, but Shari, who couldn't be here this evening because she's ill, did note that she had requested 2 trees be saved along Adelphia Farmingdale, and she just noted that one of them that they've identified was not the one that she chose. So I just want to make sure that they coordinate with her, save the 2 trees as she requested. It'll require just a little adjustment in how the berm lays out, but otherwise, she took no exception to the plan.
Mr. Ward has indicated we can agree to that as well.
Save the trees, all right. Great. Anybody from the board? Anything?
What's the width of the driveway interconnecting the 2 properties?
30. Yeah, 30 feet.
That's about how far away Mr. Ward is from me.
Your existing driveway, if you guys could put it
It's
up on the
wider,
screen.
right? People dig this in. Laura?
Your existing driveway that you guys have, on the road,
Right?
Yes.
out there,
That one or the other one?
that one, the old one.
Okay.
Are we gonna be doing, because you, at the 2 new driveways, you're gonna be curving everything, okay, and you're gonna be widening it out with new arrows and all that? Are we gonna fix his existing driveway too, so everything matches? Because it's old, you know?
Yeah, no, Mr. Chair, do I have to be
You're under oath from last.
introduced or still?
Were you previously sworn?
Yes.
You remain under oath. Just please state your name for the record.
Patrick Ward with Insight Engineering. Yeah, so this was under the jurisdiction of the county planning board for both sides. They didn't require any adjustments. Now, that being said, we can clean that up and put arrows. It's kind of this is going to be the worst boulevarded entrance you could see, but There's a driveway in, driveway out with like a center island.
I see, it's right here.
We could clean that up and add stop bar and arrows as well, directional arrows. And if there's a stop sign needed, we can add that too. We have no problem doing that.
But, you know, just saying, it's existing, make it a little safer, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So, and then what, did we, last time, Jen, with the warehouse, are we gonna be renting any of the space out, or we didn't get an answer on that?
Well, I think, go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, thank you. My client came from Soviet Russia, drove a cab in New York. He started this business. He's a survivor type, scrappy type of man. And he says, I'm making this enormous investment. I would like to have the flexibility for the future. I'm not going to live forever to someday have two tenants in there. That's not his intention now. But we would not want to preclude that based upon the nature of the investment and the style here. So it will be one operator for the time being, but we would like that flexibility to have it two spaces in the future if possible.
But only two?
Yes, on each, two on one side and then the one on the other, so three total.
Three total,
Yes.
which the septic system could handle all that.
That's a Mr. Ward question, and he's saying yes.
And then, yeah, and they would have to get sign off from the county on the septic anyway.
Yeah. Just saying, if it went from 3 to 6, you know, and then there's 6.
We would have to come back to the board. We would agree to that.
Good. Okay. Anything else? Okay. I'll open it up to the public. If the public has any questions at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public portion. Mr. Jackson? closing-
Thank you. I hope the board
you.
sees this as a success
Thanks, Richard.
story. We've made some revisions based upon the board comments. We're hopeful that, and we went through a long review process with the board professionals. They worked us over the whole way along. And we believe this is a good application, the appropriate location. We're hopeful the board sees it that way as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do appreciate this. I think this makes a lot more sense from the previous application, so I do appreciate that. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I will make motion for approval.
Mr. Cristiano, do I have a
I'll
second?
second.
Mr. Mercer, second.
Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Mr. Rebel?
Yes.
Mr. Carvonic?
Yes.
And Chairman Husted.
Yes, well done.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along to our second and final application this evening is case number SP 1108 Howell Crossing LLC. This is for a preliminary and final major site plan with ancillary variance and design waiver relief.
Yes to all those things. Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant.
Sal, I feel like we haven't seen you in a while.
I know, I miss you.
Good to see your face.
I don't have enough nights out.
Usually she had it all loaded up from. That's really more what it is.
Yeah, she has. Not getting anywhere, though.
Yeah.
Right at the gas station.
Okay. We're working on it right now. Okay. Links. Okay.
Floor's yours, Sal.
Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Again, members of the board, Salvatore Alfieri, Cleary, Jacoby, Alfieri, and Jacobs on behalf of the applicant. This is the application for two office buildings on Route 9 near the 195 interchange. We're waiting for, Laura has it. We have several witnesses. We have our civil engineer, we have an architect, we have the traffic engineer, and then Christine Cafone as a planner to deal with a few of the bulk variances that we need for the project. As you can see from the exhibit, The development is all along the one side, and the balance of the site is constrained, so there's no disturbance on the right side of your screen. Ryan McDermott is our civil engineer. We're going to request that he be sworn in so he can begin his testimony.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Ryan McDermott, McDermott.
And Ryan, would you advise the board by whom you're employed, and we're seeking to have you qualified as a civil engineer? Can you place your credentials on the record?
Certainly. Licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I graduated from Rutgers University with a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering. I'm a principal dynamic engineering consultant. I've been with the firm for about 9 years. And throughout the course of that time, I've managed and designed various commercial, industrial, and residential projects throughout the state.
Mr. Chair, unless there's questions on these credentials.
We will accept your credentials. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Ryan, do you want to start with a specific exhibit, or do you want to refer to what Laura has on the screen?
So we had submitted an aerial map exhibit. If we don't have that available, we can just scroll back to sheet 2 of the civil set, which I believe is what we're looking at here.
I can go there.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. So this is the aerial map. This is sheet 2 of the civil drawings that we had submitted. Starting with the property in question, it is block 59, lot 51. It's approximately 25.6 acres in size, located in the HD1 Highway Development Zone. Property is bound to the north by the entrance ramp to Interstate 195 eastbound. To the east is wooded area with single-family residential uses beyond. To the south is Northwoods Place with single-family residential uses beyond, as well as a variety of commercial uses up and down the Route 9 corridor. And then to the west is Route 9 with wooded area and residential further beyond that across the street. For general orientation purposes here, the north arrow points towards the left side of the screen, and the property is that oddly shaped parcel right in the center of the map there. I'll also point out that we have a slip ramp towards the bottom right side of the property, which leads from Northwoods Place, again, on the south side, right side of the property, as shown on the page here. That slip ramp leads from Northwoods Place to Route 9 northbound along the bottom portion of the site. Under existing conditions, it is undeveloped and comprised of wooded area. Approximately 2/3 of the parcel is encumbered by environmental features such as wetlands, flood hazard area, and riparian buffer. The regulated areas are associated with tributaries of the Plover Brook and are located along the south and east sides of the property. The applicant has a valid freshwater wetlands letter of interpretation as well as a flood hazard area verification from NJDEP, which verifies the locations of the wetlands, stream features, and the associated buffers. If you don't mind, could we scroll to sheet 5 of the set here, if you don't mind? Perfect. Thank you very much. This is the overall site plan page from the civil set, page 5. Again, for general orientation purposes, the north arrow points towards the left side of the screen, with Route 9 running on the west side. That's the bottom of the map here. We're here tonight seeking preliminary and final site plan approval for the construction of 2 4-story office buildings with associated parking, loading, driveways, stormwater management facilities, and other site improvements. Office buildings are permitted in the HD1 zone and as required under ordinance section 188-61. For zoning criteria purposes, we've treated each building as though it's on its own separate lot here. So we have a zone line that cuts between the 2 buildings towards the central portion of the site. Building A is located to the west. That's the bottom of the page here and faces Route 9. It's 4 stories with a footprint of 21,752 square feet for a gross floor area just above 87,000 square feet. Building B is located in the northerly corner of the site and faces the I-195 ramp. It is also 4 stories, has a footprint of about 9,000 square feet for a gross floor area just above 36,000 square feet. These office buildings are anticipated to have typical 9 to 5 operating hours, Monday through Friday, and can accommodate multiple tenants. Depending on the market conditions at the time when these are up and running, you'll see a variety of tenant sizes ranging from maybe about 2,000 square feet up to plus or minus 20,000 square feet. Now, each of these buildings has a proposed height of 49.1 feet when measured from average grade elevation 5 feet around the perimeter, as is required by the ordinance. Up to 45 feet is permitted in the underlying zone, so we do need bulk variance relief. You'll hear a bit more from that from our architect and our planner as well. With respect to site access, it's a bit unique here because of the odd shape and location of this property, specifically because of the limited frontage on Route 9, which abuts a shared acceleration and deceleration lane. NJDOT prohibits us from accessing Route 9 directly. Again, because of that very narrow frontage on the bottom of the page here, the west side of the property, right outside of that site where Route 9 is, it's a shared acceleration lane onto the Route 9 ramp, or excuse me, from the Northwoods Place ramp, and a deceleration lane, which leads to 195 eastbound. Therefore, because of the restricted access directly to Route 9, the applicant is proposing to purchase that slip ramp we talked about earlier at the southwesterly corner of the site, purchase that from the DOT, and repurpose it as a two-way driveway to serve the development. It's located in approximately the same location as it is today. However, we are widening it from about 22 feet to 30 feet, and obviously rather than leading to Route 9, it will be reconstructed to serve as the access point for our site. Essentially, we're going to have a full movement driveway along Northwoods Place, with the majority of traffic coming from and going to Route 9, as you'll hear from our traffic engineer. Sections 188-225G1 and 188-132A require sidewalks along the entire frontage of the subject property. Starting with the Route 9 northbound frontage here, again, the bottom of the page, the closest sidewalk south of our site is on the opposite side of Aldrich Road, which is about a half-mile away. To the north, the closest sidewalk is on the opposite side of Verdana Way, which is about a mile north of our site. Essentially, with the ramp to I-195, this stretch of Route 9 is not very conducive to pedestrian traffic here. Then, as we look to Northwoods Place, I don't believe there is any sidewalk networks in the adjacent residential development to the south. Furthermore, our entire southerly property line along Northwoods Place is encumbered with a flood hazard area, riparian zone, and even a portion of the floodway. So it's really not feasible to put a sidewalk there. Therefore, the applicant is seeking a waiver and instead would seek a contribution to the sidewalk fund.
So if I could just interject, we want sidewalk on Route 9. So the distance to other sidewalk on Route 9 for me is irrelevant because we're trying to create a connected network of sidewalks on 9. The bus stops along Route 9. A lot of people walk along Route 9, and if you actually took an aerial and you flew it, you will see the dirt path where the people walk currently. So I think at a very minimum, sidewalks should be figured out on how to address, along the Route 9 frontage. I don't disagree with respect to the Northwoods Place frontage. There's environmental issues associated with that. But I do think that the applicant should attempt to provide sidewalk along the Route 9 frontage.
Yeah, we can work with the applicant to look at that. Again, I hear you loud and clear. Our initial thought was that it's a heavily trafficked area with the ramps and jug handles there, especially picking up speed going to the 195 ramp. That's why initially we did not propose it. But if that's what the board wants, we will certainly take a look at that.
I mean, we required it. I don't think it was this board. I think it was the zoning board, but like the ramp down by Twin Pond Farm, the jug handle, that we required sidewalk along that as well. So I think the goal of the town is to get a complete sidewalk network along Route 9.
That's fine. Okay. And we'll pay to the fund for the Northwood.
I mean, ultimately, it's your decision, but that would be my recommendation.
Parking?
Sure. Moving along to parking here, we have 421 total parking spaces provided, whereas the ordinance requires 412 spaces at 1 space per 300 square feet for office uses. Of the 421 total spaces, 298 will serve Building A, and 123 spaces will serve Building B. Each building will have electric vehicle make-ready spaces to meet the state requirements and will be designed in accordance with ADA standards for parking. Technically, the northerly property line, again, the left side of the page here, the northerly property line, which is adjacent to the I-195 ramp, is a front yard with a 60-foot front yard setback. Section 188.11B prohibits accessory structures in the front yard, where the environmental encumbrances here located to the east and south of the property really push our development towards the north side of the site. So we do have improvements proposed within the front yard, including basins, a retaining wall, a 4-foot fence, a guide rail, and parking spaces. So variance relief is required. However, this front yard does abut a ramp to the interstate with no discernible impact on the surrounding uses, and you will hear a little bit more about the relief from our planner as well. With respect to site circulation, our primary drive aisle, which leads from our driveway at Northwoods Place along the east side of the development back to Building B, is 30 feet wide. The drive aisles for the standard parking areas around the buildings are 25 feet wide. Ordinance Section 188-106A states driveway widths exceeding 24 feet shall be approved by the planning board, giving consideration to the width, curbing, traffic flow, radii of curves, and traffic lane divider, as the case may be. On the other hand, Section 188-106F1A states, on industrial and commercial applications, a 30-foot wide circulation aisle must be maintained for emergency purposes. So our site has been designed to accommodate circulation for a fire truck, refuse trucks, box trucks. While one of these ordinance sections encourages a narrower drive aisle, which is likely an attempt to minimize the amount of impervious coverage, the other ordinance section encourages wider drive aisles for safe circulation. So we've incorporated a mix of 25-foot and 30-foot wide aisles here, are providing adequate vehicle circulation around the buildings, throughout the parking areas, and at the driveway, so we do feel that the intent of this ordinance was met. For an office development such as this, particularly with respect to the loading operations, we would anticipate that the largest delivery vehicle accessing the site is an SU-30, which is your typical box truck. Building A has a striped loading area adjacent to the southerly facade, just to the right of the building there. And then Building B has a striped loading area north of the building. It's about 35 feet away, and the applicant will be providing direct sidewalk access to the loading zone from the building, which was a suggestion by the board engineer. Even though there are no intervening driveways or parking areas, because it's not directly adjacent to the building, we do technically require waiver relief from Section 188-106I2. Similarly, because this is a shorter loading space designed really just for box trucks, approximately 35 feet in length, whereas the ordinance requires a 60-foot long loading zone, waiver relief is needed for the size of Building B's loading space. With respect to refuse and recycling operations, each building has its own 10-foot by 20-foot masonry trash enclosure, which are located adjacent to the loading zones. Trash and recycling would be picked up by a private hauler on an as-needed basis. Typically, that's 2 to 3 times per week. Moving along to stormwater management design, the project is considered a major development per NJAC 7:8, which is the state stormwater regulations, because it disturbs more than 1 acre of land and increases motor vehicle impervious surface by more than a quarter acre. The project has been designed to meet the stormwater quantity, quality, and groundwater recharge requirements set forth by the state and local requirements. The proposed stormwater management facilities include a series of roof leaders, inlets, and underground conveyance systems, as well as 1 above-ground infiltration basin, 2 above-ground bioretention basins, 4 pervious pavement systems, and 1 underground infiltration basin. Section 188-106F2 requires parking areas to be constructed with a surface course at least 1.5 inches thick and a base course at least 3 inches thick. Our pervious pavements are about 3 to 4 feet thick, so we do meet that ordinance requirement. The majority of stormwater runoff on site is directed to one of these various basins and then discharged through one of 3 outfall structures, where it is ultimately tributary to the stream features that are located on the easterly and southerly portions of the parcel. Due to the aforementioned wetlands and flood hazard area encumbrances on site, the stormwater management design was subject to review from the DEP, and the applicant did receive a flood hazard area individual permit from the DEP. There were a few technical comments from the board engineer in the most recent review letter, a few of which deal with the grading and stormwater management design. The applicant would happily comply with those should the board decide to act favorably on the application. Moving along to buffering and landscaping. Under Section 188-63A, the ordinance requires a 50-foot perimeter buffer along all lot and street lines, separating a non-residential use from either a residential use or a residential zoning district line. Section 188-63D prohibits structures, disturbance, storage of materials, parking of vehicles, and stormwater basins in the buffer area. Furthermore, Section 188-63E requires at least 2 of the following within the buffer: landscaping, fencing, or walls at least 10 feet high, a landscape berm at least 6 feet high, a building setback from the buffer of at least 200 feet, or a parking area setback of at least 100 feet with required screening. We have residential zones with residential uses located along the easterly property line. Again, that's the top of the page here. Across Northwoods Place to the south, that's the right side of the page here, and across Route 9 to the west, which is the bottom of the page. We are providing a compliant buffer along the easterly property line. I personally walked the site with the township's licensed tree expert to review the state of existing vegetation, and Ms. Sparrow had requested that we preserve the buffer vegetation along the easterly property line. So we are doing that, and the applicant is further supplementing that buffer with new trees as well as another 32 plus or minus feet of horizontal separation between the property line and our closest parking area. So that's on top of the 50-foot buffer. We have over 80 feet between the parking spaces for Building B at the top of the page there and the easterly property line. Furthermore, with the exception of the entrance driveway being relocated, the slip ramp, we're not disturbing any of the existing vegetation along the southerly property line, which faces Northwoods Place. And although we're not proposing any parking in the westerly 50-foot buffer along Route 9, our access road does go through that buffer, and we have a section of retaining wall with an above-ground basin which approach into the buffer. Section 188.12A restricts fences or walls from being more than 4 feet high when located in the setback, and more than 8 feet high when outside of the setback. Our proposed retaining wall in the front yard along the northerly property line there reaches a maximum height of approximately 6 feet, and the wall along the east side of the main drive aisle reaches a maximum height of about 9 feet, and that's on the back portion opposite of the ramp. Our proposed landscape design includes 247 total trees, many of which are located within the easterly and westerly buffers I just spoke about, as well as along the main drive aisle to meet the street tree spacing requirements of 188-122. The ordinance requires street trees to be at least 20 feet from the curb line, but with the limited space on the side of our relocated drive aisle, the slip ramp, our trees are closer to the road than that 20-foot requirement. In addition to the 247 trees, we have 658 shrubs, 412 ground cover plantings, 51 perennial plantings, 821 ornamental grass plantings for a total of 2,189 new plantings on this site. And at the request of the board professionals, the applicant has agreed to add more foundation plantings around the building, specifically on the short sides of each building, in accordance with section 188-106G. And despite the amount of new trees that are proposed here and the total plantings that are proposed here, because the entire site is currently wooded, the applicant does fall short of the replacement quantity and is required to provide a contribution to the tree fund. With respect to site lighting, we have 45 pole-mounted fixtures ranging from 20 feet to 24 feet in mounting height, 19 wall-mounted fixtures spread throughout the buildings. Section 188-22 of the ordinance requires a minimum of 0.3 foot candles with an average of 0.5 foot candles maximum. We meet the minimum requirement throughout the pavement areas, and when you average this across the site, have an average which is well below the 0.5 foot candle maximum. With respect to utilities for the development, water service, starting with water service, each building has a fire service and domestic water service, which will ultimately connect to the existing main within Route 9. We've added fire hydrants at the request of the fire official, and we'll be updating the plans to include fire striping per his request as well. For sanitary sewer, each building has its own separate sanitary lateral, and then we have a combined 8-inch trunk line, which is tributary to the existing main in Northwoods Place. Gas service, our proposed gas connection will connect to the existing main in Route 9, and then for electric, our proposed underground electric service will connect to the existing utility pole along Northwoods Place. And I'll just touch quickly on the signage which is proposed here. The applicant is proposing a 36 square foot monument sign near the westerly property line along Route 9. It will be 12 feet long by 3 feet high and complies with the ordinance. Each building will have a single wall-mounted sign, the sizing of which will comply with the ordinance here as well. And we will be lowering the sign on Building A to meet the height requirements. I know that was a comment in one of the review letters, so we will be lowering the sign to avoid the need for variance relief there.
A couple quick follow-ups. You did mention the fire hydrant comments. We did receive a fire report from May 6th of 2024 with 3 comments. We would agree to comply with those comments. Is that
That's correct.
You also mentioned the CME report and the stormwater management comments, but there are other technical comments contained within that report. More specifically, when you get to the, after the primary comments, after page 8, there's a series of pages that have technical comments. Have you reviewed those comments?
We have, and we would agree to comply with all those.
A couple other questions that are raised in the CME report. One relates to phasing. Will this project be phased, or will the site improvements be phased?
There's no phasing proposed at this time.
Okay, and I'm just making sure we hit everything else on that. Yeah, I think I did. And then finally, actually, that was it. So, Mr. Chair, we're finished with the engineering.
Can you go through this piece of land that you're potentially purchasing, the throughway, whatever, I forget the term for it? Slip ramp.
And Ryan, that would be purchased from the state, right, the DOT?
Correct, that would be purchased from the DOT. So, yeah, it's zoomed in on this corner here. So you have the jug handle at the bottom right corner, the southwest corner. We're not touching that. What we are planning to repurpose is that, exactly, right where that cursor is. Right now, that leads to Route 9. We're planning to relocate that on our site to serve as our driveway. We've applied to the DOT, we've had pre-application meeting with them, and that is the current proposal. We're working through our final permitting, but that's what we're proposing to do.
You guys have a better picture of this whole thing?
Wait, I'm just curious. So the ramp, that's a ramp off of 9, right? A little jug handle.
But then there's one that goes right from Northwoods right to Route 9, so they don't have to wait at the light.
Really?
If you look on the screen,
Right there.
I don't think I've ever seen that, ever.
Right there.
Bringing it in here, correct?
Correct.
To new property.
Correct.
Wow.
So then this would just all become landscape where this kind of skews off this paved area?
Correct. It is, it's definitely a unique undertaking.
I didn't even know it was there, to be honest with you. I've been here
Is there
13 years.
Is there some undergrade piping to kind of carry these tributaries beneath this? And does this relocation affect some of that?
Yep, so we got our permitting from the state for that already.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that slip ramp from Northwoods is going to go into the property?
That's correct.
If purchased?
That's correct.
Got it.
And if not purchased, we can't build this.
Yeah, we again,
What are
we're
the preliminary conversations? I mean, I'm sure they've been had already.
Yeah,
right?
they're pretty far along.
Okay.
Just in case those board members that were not here years ago, this site was approved, got preliminary approval for a hotel, and that exact same driveway configuration was part of that development as well, to modify the slip ramp and have the access point onto Northwoods.
And that's primarily because the DOT will not give us direct access on 9.
here for a minute.
The amount of times I made that jug to get Happy Meals, and I
You
never
never
even
saw
knew that was there.
I was just saying that to John. I know that jug handle very well. It's crazy.
If you come out of Northwoods, it's easy to go on 9. You don't go to the light. You go right out.
So they'll have to go to the light.
Now they'll have to go to the...
No, now you're gonna have to go to the light. Yes. Well, that's, take away one, get the other, but that's on a big development back there. I was just asking you if you guys have better renderings of this whole thing?
Of the...
Of the whole site, like pictures, better?
we did submit some. I don't know if there's access to them right now. I could share handouts as well, if that helps.
Well, just looking for more.
Yeah, we have a colored rendering of the site, and then we have architectural
Yeah.
copies.
Me neither.
Oh, maybe here?
We have a handout, I emailed to,
I didn't mean to do it on that screen. Go to
But that's gonna add to, what's good about that, what's good about that though, that's a light.
No.
That was a light. That's where they're coming out. You know what I mean, if that was a light to the left to go on, that would force everybody to go north. And then,
That's the only.
you understand what I'm saying? It would force everybody to go to Stewart's. Right. And then come back if you're going south. Thank you. So these are the lights, the existing light, no, that's good.
Eileen, was that, what we're handing out, was that on here?
Now it's.
Now, people that live back there,
That was only what we emailed today.
their country would be.
Because.
I don't see these on here.
No, I don't have,
Oh, okay.
I have enough for everybody.
So the retaining walls are encapsulating the basins, so the front of the wall, the toe of the wall is the bottom of the basin, and then the basins are retaining the parking and the roads on the high side, right? So that's, what is that, like, just a modular block, like MSC wall, probably like a Keystone block?
Yeah, they haven't been fully designed yet, but because they are greater than 4 feet in height, we do have to provide signed and sealed engineering drawings for them.
Right, yeah, you need geogrid and all that
Correct.
good stuff. and-
Correct.
So, Mr. Chair, this is new for tonight, so we need to mark these. So what are we up to, Eileen?
Yeah, it's quite a buffer. And the pervious pavement, is that included in the operations and maintenance manual, the upkeep? Because I know it gets silted up over time, so that'll be maintained by the landlord and owner, that it's cleaned out.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And that's usually a requirement, and usually recorded in the county clerk's office so that a subsequent
Okay.
owner knows they have the obligation.
Yeah, same with the basins, yeah. It's just that the pervious pavement silts up a lot quicker, so it's something.
Everything is owner maintained, yes.
Yep.
The township has enough to do.
No. Collect taxes.
Yeah.
So you have the colored, you saw the aerial already, that was on the screen, so you now have the colored rendering. You can see how much green there is to the south, I guess that is.
That's correct, the south and the east.
Mr. Chair, were there extras? If I could put them so the
Yeah.
public can maybe look at them?
Hey, it was pretty hidden. Like the way-
I'll be honest, I'm just gonna be honest here. I need to hear the traffic testimony in this, because to me, visually, this looks like a nightmare. The ingress, egress, and I know off-site traffic cannot be factored into this application, I understand that, but the ingress, egress to this property, knowing what goes on currently, and then factoring in, what is it, 400 spaces? 400 cars, possibly? I don't know.
We have-
So,
we-
Yeah, I'll listen, but,
We have traffic, we're gonna bring the architect next, because it's rather easy, and then traffic will be right after the architect.
was there any talk about, just out of curiosity, a light at the egress, ingress, off on Northwoods?
Not sure. Yeah, we'll have to ask Justin when he comes up.
My sense, Mr. Chairman, I mean, we'll hear from the traffic engineer, but that's too close to the existing signal at
Right.
Route 9.
I just have a couple of things.
Sure,
I'm sorry,
sure.
Mr. Ledger, do you? I don't know, Ryan, I apologize if you talked about this already. There's a provision in the ordinance that you have one tree for every 10 parking spaces, and I know we discussed this at length at the TRC. They're requesting the waiver for that. We had suggested that they take whatever vegetation would have been required to make that compliant and place that like in the buffer or elsewhere on the site, because I'm sure you can imagine, those islands in the parking lot never really work the way they're intended to. They get hit, the plows don't like them, they become tripping hazards, ashtrays, et cetera. So as long as the requisite, my recommendation is that the requisite number of trees be calculated, coordinated with Shari, and then distributed on the site elsewhere. But they technically would still need the waiver for that.
Right.
I think there was, go ahead, Laura. Jump in.
And, Mr. Chairman, while Jen's going through her report,
Oh, here we go.
also, the applicant needs to seek a waiver to make a contribution to the tree fund,
Yes.
so just so the board is aware of that. And then EV, did I miss that?
I apologize if you did. We are providing EV spaces. I know there was a comment about providing one additional space. We will absolutely provide that.
I just have a couple more. On my letter dated today, page 8, we just had a note that the plans just need a little cleanup with respect to like the height of things such as like walls, fences, and those types of things, and adding details. Is that something you would agree to?
Absolutely.
Also, we had a question about the condition of the chain link fence along the westerly property line. Did you talk about that at all?
I believe that's intended to be removed.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
All right, we're
Alright,
going to call
Sal.
our architect. Laura, you put that resume? Good job, Ryan.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
John Sirocco, Saracco. I'm a principal of John Sirocco Architect LLC.
And John, your credentials, please.
Yeah, I graduated from Rensselaer Polytechnic in 1981, got my license in New Jersey in 1985, been actively practicing since then. I'm in front of boards on a monthly or maybe twice a month throughout the state of New Jersey for various types of projects.
Thank you. We'll accept your credentials.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and the rendering that's on the screen now is the rendering you prepared, is that correct?
Correct.
Could you just generally, they obviously could see it, but just describe the materials and the design, please?
Yes, this is the eastern building, I think we're calling it Building B. I'm sorry, we're calling it north and south. This is the north building, the smaller building. You can see the 4 stories. The 3 upper stories have floor-to-ceiling glass. On the glass is interrupted by concrete patterns on all facades. I should point out that all 4 sides of the building is treated equally. There's no front of the building, no back of the building. It all looks equally the same. This is designed as a Class A office building. The client is looking to attract top clients here, top tenants. And amenity space is becoming extremely important in the office market today. And you could see on the left side of the building, and there's also on the right side that you can't see, we are providing balconies for the tenants of the building. On the ground floor, we closed it up a little bit with punch-out windows. You could see that in the corner, next to the man there in the corner there. And we have a canopy at the center of the building designating the entrance to the building. If we can go to, how are we doing? Who has control here? Oh, very good. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, if you could go to PB 200, that's the floor plans.
She has something up there.
Very good. Okay, so this is the south building, the larger building, closer to Route 9. And if the bottom plan is the first floor plan, you could the entrance to there's an entrance at both sides of the building, at the top of the building and at the bottom of the building, facing the large parking lots. And we have a double bay elevator, 2 elevators servicing the building. You can see our 2 egress stairs on each side of the corridor, leading out to the back of the building, and of course, bathrooms, mechanical spaces off the core of the building. I should point out that the building is being designed as a vanilla box. There are no specific tenants or type of tenants at this time. So we are proposing just the core and the shell of the building at this time. When we go to the upper floor plan, that's a plan reflecting the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor of the building. Again, the core obviously gets a little smaller. We don't have the main lobby on the 1st floor any longer. And you could see the 2 hatched areas on the left and the right side of the building. Those are our balconies for tenant use that occurs on all 3 of the upper floors. It's a little hard to read, but you could see there's large expanses of windows, again, floor-to-ceiling windows, that's interrupted with the concrete piers. So there's going to be a very strong visual component to being inside these office buildings. When we go to PB 200, the following page, the upper elevation is it's both the east and the west. It's a symmetrical building. As I say, we're treating all sides of the building equally the same. So I'm calling this both the east and the west elevation. And just to get into the height, technically our building height is listed on the drawing at 49 feet 0 inches. We just want to correct that because technically the height of the building should be measured from the average grade around 6 feet around the building, and the sidewalks are going to pitch a little bit away. So really, our building height would be 49'1". That's a little technicality. The sign, I should just point out that ABC sign, obviously generic, that will be lowered so we don't ask for a variance. Mr. McCormick pointed that out.
Lowering it? Can I just stop you there? I understand that you don't want to ask for a variance. I'm just curious. I don't have a problem with where it's located on the building. I think based on the facade, that's generally where it seems to fit. So if you were to lower it, where exactly would you put it? That it wouldn't look out of place?
That's a very good, so what we could do is we could lower the window height in the punch-out windows in the concrete facades. We could lower that window head a little bit, and we could make the sign a little bit narrower.
Or you could ask for the variance.
Or we could ask for the variance, yes, and that's
Just a
something-
thought. I mean, I don't know how the board feels about it, and they do know that I don't generally talk in a positive way about the architecture that we get here on a regular basis. I think the buildings look fantastic. I think they're complying with all of the requirements in our ordinance, which are difficult to comply with the physical bump outs, et cetera. And even though you do have a flat roof, we don't prohibit flat roofs, we discourage flat roofs, so there's no relief associated with that. I would advocate, and again, it's up to the board, I would advocate, Sal, that you seek the relief for the location, just because I think that that's where it looks like it's supposed to be, right? Like when you drive past a bigger building, especially given where this is located, right on 195, which is elevated to begin with, on Route 9. But again, it's totally up to you. I think if you lower the sign, I think you're going to lose it in the facade.
I agree. I appreciate that very much.
So, I mean, it's up to you, Sal, to decide what you guys want to do, and then it's ultimately up to the board. But I would take no exception if the applicant were to...
Thank you.
I think the architecture is great, and I would hate to muddy it by lowering the sign just to lower it.
Right, and we would prefer that...
As long as the size is compliant, I don't have a problem with where it's
And
located.
it would be compliant. We would prefer to keep it and request
Looks
the
like it's
variance
etched
relief,
into
of
the
course, would be the board's call on that. Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
Okay, if we go back to PB 201, that's the third page. Yeah, so we see the roof plan at the lower left-hand corner of the, and we show our proposed, we show our proposed HVAC units, and I should just point out that those will, without a doubt, be less than 12% of the roof area.
Well,
Is it 10, will it be 10%?
Oh, I'm sorry, 10%.
It will not, we will not require relief. We'll
For the
provide-
10%?
Yeah.
So you're really just asking for the height, the C variance for the overall height of the building?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
When we go to PB 300, this is the north building, and it's really a similar approach to the building design, not only aesthetically on the outside, but also internally how we organize it. It's just the net rentable space is less than on the south building, so I won't burden everyone with going through all these plans. And even on PB 301, again, we see the elevations are very, very similar to the south building. The roof plan has a similar approach, where we're definitely going to be under the 10% with the HVAC units.
I just
Yes.
want to clarify that we showed one colored rendering of one building. The other building is going to be the same.
Yes, it's just going to be dimensionally, it's going to be a little shorter.
Right, okay.
Right.
That concludes the architectural testimony, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Good. All right. I'll open it up to the public. This is just questions for the architect. It's just, you can come on up, ma'am, but it's just questions for the architect at this time.
Not yet?
Not yet? Okay. We'll get to you, I promise. Okay.
Ready for traffic?
We're ready. I see who's here, so we're definitely ready.
It's wonderful to see everybody again.
How you doing?
Good, good, good. Yourself?
Good.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Justin Taylor, Taylor.
Justin, we're seeking to qualify you as our traffic expert. Would you place your credentials on the record, please?
Absolutely. I hold a bachelor's in engineering from the University of Delaware. I'm a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey, as well as Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Texas. I'm also a certified professional traffic operations engineer by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, practicing traffic engineering for almost 25 years now, and have testified at hundreds of boards throughout the state of New Jersey, including this board in the past.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you very much. So, my responsibility as part of the project was to work hand in hand with the civil engineer to design a site that operates safely and efficiently, and also to research the surrounding roadway network to ensure that there is sufficient capacity to accommodate the traffic that would be proposed by the office development that we are seeking. As Ryan described, it's a challenge here when we started to look at it on how we were going to access the site. Given that one of the frontages is along the Route 195 ramp, and the FHWA won't grant you access there. One of the frontages is along Route 9 in the acceleration lane for the slip ramp and the decel lane for the ramp. NJDOT will not grant you access there. And then the entire southern portion of the site is encumbered by wetlands. And so there isn't the ability to push a driveway through there. It left us a very unique solution in investigating the utilization of that slip ramp. The first piece that we had to look at there was the amount of volume that's currently using it. Who's coming out of the residential development and making that right? As a traffic engineer, we always look at the peak hours, right? We look in the morning commuting and the evening commuting. What we found was between 8 and 10 vehicles in an hour that are making that right turn. So initially, our investigation said that's really not a lot of volume. The impact to the traffic signal by now having them come down and make a right at the signal shouldn't impact the operation of the signal. In order to further confirm that, what we needed to do was to do the complete traffic study, get the background traffic counts along Route 9 at the intersection of Northwoods and 9, utilize background growth rates, utilize trip generation by the ITE to kind of put together a model of what's out there now and what will be after we're done. So to break that down a little bit, we picked up traffic count data during the morning peak hour, or 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., and the evening peak hour between 4:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Based on that analysis, we then boiled that 2-hour window down to the busiest hour to find out what the peak volume coming through the intersection would be, right? In the morning, it runs from 7:30 to 8:30, and in the afternoon, it's 4:45 to 5:45. Right? So that gives us a base model of what's out there at that intersection. We then look to the Institute of Transportation Engineers and their publication Trip Generation to determine what type of traffic the office buildings that's being proposed would generate. Obviously, it's not there. We need to figure out what new traffic that it is going to bring to the surrounding roadway network and build that into the model. I will tell you it generates somewhere between 175 and 180 peak hour trips, right? We're an office building, it's very directional. Most of the people are coming in the morning to the office building, so you get about 150, 160 people that would be coming in the morning, and in the evening about the same. You got about 145 going out because the people leave at a slightly different rate. But you're in that 150 to 160 in an hour. We then take that volume and surcharge it onto the intersection and run capacity analyses as prescribed by the FHWA in their publication, the Highway Capacity Manual. And what we really required to do is take a look at a before and after. What was it operating before? what was it operating after, and what then is our impact to the intersection. And what I will tell you is, hard as it is to believe, the operation of the east and the westbound approaches are going to be almost identical to what they are today. And the reason behind that is that the traffic signal on Route 9 is an actuated traffic signal. What that means is there are detectors, and the amount of traffic that is on the side street approach directly impacts the amount of green time that that side street approach gets. So by us loading the traffic onto there, those side street approaches then call additional traffic. It goes from about 9 seconds in the evening to about 20 seconds in the evening to accommodate the traffic that would be generated by the office building. So when you look at the before and after, what you see is that those side street approaches that are really being impacted by the traffic are operating with B level of service because it can take that additional green time, right? We all know what Route 9 is like. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's not traffic on Route 9. What I will tell you is this use and this type of use specifically is actually working well because it's counterflow to what's going on out there today, right? During the evening peak hour, trying to get south on 9 is, we'll say difficult to be nice about it, right? And it's really a function of Aldrich Road and the signal and the people backing up from Aldrich. However, the traffic associated with this project, everybody's leaving in the evening at the same peak hour. Not to say that some people aren't going to go south, but the vast majority of the employees here are heading north, either to 195 or to points further north on Route 9, in direct opposite of what the heavy volume that's on Route 9 in the evening peak hour. Similarly, in the morning, as people are coming in, you're coming south from 195 into the jug handle and across, and the primary flow of Route 9 at that point is northbound. So it actually works fairly well with the existing traffic patterns, busy as it is out there, with what's going on today. I would also say that that theory holds true to its proximity to the adjacent residential development. The same thing, people are leaving to go to work in the morning. So they're all coming to the eastbound approach of that intersection, whereas all of our traffic is now coming in. They're using the far side jug handle to come across the intersection, and vice versa. When people are coming home and they're coming south on 9 and they want to make the jug handle, all of our traffic's coming out. They're not using that because they're all leaving to go back to where they live. So based on the analysis that we have, it shows that the levels of service are comparable to what's out there today. There is a little degradation to what's going on Route 9 because, as I said, the green time on the side street has to come from somewhere. It comes from the green time on Route 9. And there's minor degradations that fall well within the tolerances of what DOT has reviewed and essentially approved. But the side street approaches are going to see the same type of operation and the same type of delays that they see today. There was a question, Mr. Chair, about a traffic signal at the driveway. Laura has it right. It's way too close. That being said, it also really isn't necessary from an operational standpoint. The traffic coming out of Northwoods Place in the residential development, while our people going to and from work, it's really rather low. And the ability to turn left into the driveway across the volume that's coming down the road, or people coming out in the evening onto Northwoods, operate at great levels of service, just because of the amount of volume that's on Northwoods Place.
So Justin, you said it was an actuated
Yes.
light? All right, so explain this to me. I'm a geologist, you're the expert, right? So dumb it down a little bit. If I'm coming southbound on Route 9 and I take the Stanley Boulevard,
Yep.
right, wrap around and go to my office building, right? The light will pick up and sense patterns of, hey, Monday through Friday, people are coming at this set hour. We're going to extend that a period of time of being green, and then it knows the people are already at work, and it'll go back to a shorter green time. Like, how does that actually work?
That's exactly almost exactly how it works.
Okay.
The actuation gives it a minimum amount of green time, right? It's 7 seconds green time. And then the detectors say, oh, there's still cars there, let's extend it by 2 seconds. Let's extend it by 2 seconds, until it no longer senses that the vehicles are there. So we don't even have to change a maximum. So you're not sitting on Route 9 with nobody on the side streets, right? The signal is determining how much volume is on either one of the approaches. So in the busy morning hour, when everybody's coming to work, we found that it went from about 9 seconds to almost 20 seconds on the eastbound approach out of Stanley in the morning, and the westbound approach as everybody's coming out in the afternoon.
Okay.
But in the rest of the day, it goes back to even potentially not getting called, right? If nobody's there, Route 9 stays green.
All right, so in those, I guess my question leads to, in those peak hours of people entering and exiting from the site, right? Giving more green time coming out of the side streets. In the meantime, Route 9 is just,
That's
right?
No. And the reason I say that, in the evening, this signal is not the bottleneck, right?
No,
The bottleneck- and so
understood
what-
it's not this signal, right?
What'll happen is, you'll get a little bit more room to clear into as you approach down to Aldrich, because the side streets called a little bit longer here, right? So those gaps spread out. The other thing I will say to you, one of the very first things that Ms. Beam brought up to us when we started this was a request for me to go to DOT and talk to them. These signals are supposed to be coordinated. They're
In
supposed
sync,
to be
right?
Yep,
Yeah.
they're supposed to be an intelligent transportation system network that platoons them so that as you come down the corridor, you hit green lights and then they all stop together. It appears that it's not working. And so we have a DOT application in. We have a first round of comments. We're in the process of revising them. And as part of that, we will absolutely bring it to their attention that this is what we found, right? And if it's something they can fix, it's something they can hopefully fix to ease some of the congestion along there. But as I said, I don't think, given the way this site and the use on this site, the specific office use, I don't think it's going to impact that flow, just because of where people are coming from and going to.
Justin,
Yep.
I've listened to you over the last 4 years, and I really enjoy, and I don't take this the wrong way, I'm sure you're gonna, all right? You've gotten really good at the word salad, the way you explain stuff, all right? First of all, we don't know who's gonna occupy the building yet. We don't know who's gonna be, where they're coming from, north or south, east or west. So you saying that every time I hear you over the last 4 years, you don't know where the people are coming from, leaving, going south, okay, whatever. So
can I-
I just think that's funny that you always bring that kind of stuff up. When is the last time, the last updated traffic flow on Route 9? The last DOT real study done? What year?
My study or DOT study?
DOT study.
I couldn't tell the last time DOT's done a study of their own along the corridor. I'm not sure.
You realize what that corridor has become, correct?
I do, I mean, like, so our traffic study, right, we started in 2022, we updated counts because this project has dragged longer than we thought it was going to. I updated counts in early November of this year. So the data and the numbers that I just quoted to you are all based on stuff from 2024. To take a step back to the distribution, yes, it's a projection. However, what we do for these projections, we use census data for workplace of Howell Township, right? And so we look at where the people live that currently work in Howell Township. And we utilize that and the surrounding roadway network to get to this location. So it is a projection, right? I absolutely don't know that all the employees that are in 20,000 square feet of that building are going to be on 195. But we can draw good projections given the other employees in Howell Township of where they're working. So I have a high degree of confidence that we know to and from where they're going within, 10 to 15%.
So I have a couple of questions. I think you mentioned 150 to 160 trips coming in and out of the premises, right?
Yep.
How does that equate to the 421 parking spaces there, say if both buildings are full, with tenants? I understand there's probably a factor of safety built in with extra spots, but that's, it's less than half of the number of spots that would be in there. So how does that?
It's a really good question.
How does that account for it?
This chair doesn't like me. That becomes a function of the fact that we look at 1 hour in and out, right? You have different businesses that start at different times. You have flexible work schedules that we're starting to see, and you have the visitors that come in throughout the day. And so the data that we get from the ITE takes a look at an office building of this size, and then physically we count the ins and outs, and we submit that to the Institute of Transportation Engineers, right? And they correlate all that information, but it's really a function of you don't have every single person coming in 1 hour in the morning and leaving in the evening.
So is that regulated by the DOT standards on how you stagger that? Or do you, because it seems like an aggressive assumption that you're stating every business that's in there is going to be staggered, where there's going to be flexible work arrangements, and some people are coming in at 7, some people are coming in at 8, some people are coming in at 9. Does the DOT regulate how you stagger that, or is that just kind of an experience? Like, how do you do
I
that?
just want to supplement that,
Sorry.
Justin. When you do these counts, the heavy level of traffic is when all the employees arrive in the morning or leave at night. During the rest of those parking spaces are for visitors that come periodically during the course of the day, correct?
That's correct.
So
And there
those
is-
spaces are not all people showing up at 9 o'clock and leaving at 5.
Yes, that's correct. And the data that we utilize, both from ITE and the NJDOT publishes their rates from their Highway Access Permit System, their HAP system, which is based on ITE data. And those are the trip generation rates that we're required to use for land uses along the state highway corridor. And it's a function of experience and hard numbers that are collected and submitted to the ITE.
Right. So I understand that it's an actuated signal, and I understand what you're saying about the gap with Aldrich. It gives more time to create a gap there. Would it be unorthodox, Laura, to ask for, do you use open traffic? How do you simulate it? Would we be able to see the model simulation? Because the open traffic model that simulates these movements, you can actually see like a screenshot of the cars backing up and the queue. It would help us kind of wrap our head around exactly what the implications would be to the north to east movement, the south to east, the south to west, you know what I mean?
I mean, yeah.
Is that something they could provide? Is that
I mean,
typical, just to show us how that queue is building up? Because, I come home from Philly here, trying to get off this ramp, and everyone trying to get onto this ramp here to make a left or a right. It is impossible to weave in and out of here, and you're just adding to that queue. So if we were able to see a screenshot of that simulation model with all those traffic movements, it would help us wrap our head around what the implications are.
So
Injecting all this additional traffic flow.
we utilize Synchro for
Okay.
our analysis purposes, and the simulation arm of that is SimTraffic, right? So it is something that we could provide.
Okay.
What I want to go back to is the statement that you just made. When you come home from Philly, it's a nightmare trying to get down and get onto Route 9 and weave into it. At that point, all of our traffic, none of our traffic is using that same jug handle. Because they're already on the
The
site.
actuated signal coming across is still backing up the north-south traffic on Route 9.
Well,
Which still adds to the complexity of getting off that ramp into Route 9
I don't,
south.
so personally, I don't think it does, right? I think the function of the volume and the backup is not this signal. If this signal had more or less green time, you still can't go anywhere, because the backup is all coming from Aldrich Road.
Justin, the backup over there, if you want this week, I'll drive you over there, we'll hang out for a couple hours. From Stewart's Root Beer.
Yep.
Okay? Listen, I'm not trying to, okay, we live here. Okay?
I mean, listen, I live in Freehold. I drive this,
So you know.
this corridor all the time. so-
Traffic on Route 9, southbound.
Yep.
This is what I have the issue with what you said. They're going north or they're gonna go east on 195,
Yep.
whatever. All right, we live here. That intersection, Stewart's intersection.
Yep.
Aldrich Road's intersection. Salem Hills intersection, right, guys? We know the intersection. That is just it's bump, 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 all the way through. I think the bigger concern will be leaving there, going southbound to the light because of the jug handle, people coming around to go back to McDonald's or back to Aldridge or whatever, okay? I'm not saying, listen, I get you.
So, can I hit a couple points in there, then?
Good.
One of the things we looked at, and one of the things that DOT was concerned about, was the queue lengths on the eastbound approach, on North Woods, not interfering with the jug handle. So if you were coming north on 9 and you wanted to take the jug handle and go back, go down to McDonald's, go down to the Mexican place on the corner. Yeah,
Whatever.
you don't.
Taco Bell? Sorry. Just throw it in there.
Not touching that one.
Here, coming out of the ramp and people coming out of the...
So what we needed to do, and what they were concerned about, and what we proved to them, is the queues, because you have the 2 lanes on Northwoods Place, with the green time that's coming and the cycle length that's there, right, the 105 or 140 seconds in the evening, it won't back up past the jug handle ramp, right? And that's a function just of the fact that there is enough green time already allocated to the side street for it to draw upon. So it's not going to interfere with you if you're trying to make a U-turn and go southbound again, right? You'll be able to clear, and you'll clear every cycle. And again, I think what needs to be kept in mind is we all understand this area, and we understand that Route 9 is busy, congested, and there's probably a regional roadway improvement that needs to be done to alleviate this. That's not the fault or the responsibility of this application, right?
We understand that.
And like I said, if this, right, we're in a highway commercial zone, right? You could put a shopping center in here, which would have a much different traffic pattern and be, in my opinion, more detrimental than the very directional flow that you get in an office building and the orientation of where those employees, in my projections, are coming to and from.
But wouldn't it be easier to keep this slipway and just build your road right next to it so people can get onto the slipway if they want to go north, or if they want to go south, come to the light? Why can't you build a road, keep that slipway, and put a road right next to it, your own entrance?
I will talk briefly, and then we will go outside my area of expertise, but given the environmental constraints, we are butted up against the wetlands and the buffers and the riparian zone that needs to be, we actually had to get special approval from DEP to widen that slip ramp to be the 30 feet that we needed. So there's really no ability to push further into the environmentally sensitive areas. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to go to NJDOT. If we could have done that and we could have accessed Northwoods Place, we wouldn't have had to go to DOT because we have no access on DOT at that point. But that's the only way we could get to and from the site, given the ramp, given 195, and given the environmental constraints. And as I said at the beginning, when we looked at it, if there had been 200 people making that right, this probably wouldn't have worked, right? But the amount of volume that's utilizing that slip ramp doesn't constitute needing a slip ramp.
So is there just conversations with DOT, Sal, that just purchased the slip ramp? Is there any other DOT input that's required for this?
So absolutely, and so I kind of breezed over that at the beginning, right? We had our first pre-app with them in early 2022. We submitted an application for a major access application to them in late 2022. That includes the traffic study that you guys have, right? Full set of plans for the slip ramp and what we're proposing to do there. And so it's fully under their review. They've given us a first round of comments. There was no major red flags. We have a bunch of technical comments that we're working out with them, but nothing that constituted them saying no to this. And I would note, as was alluded to, that the hotel that was approved ended up with an NJDOT permit.
Mm-hmm.
So DOT had looked at it once already. We came back with saying, hey, we're doing the exact same thing. So minus the minor comments that we need to clean up, I don't envision us having any issue getting a permit for it.
Okay.
I just have one follow-up question, then obviously I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure.
The access driveway, the point where the slip ramp, if you will, meets the existing roadway, can you describe that and how that would operate? Meaning that will operate safely, efficiently, is there adequate capacity to get the cars from the slip ramp onto the road?
Where it intersects Northwoods Place?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. It operates with great level service A at that point. And that's, again, a function of the fact of the volume that's on Northwoods Place. But it's been designed for good sight lines. It's been designed for the radii and the truck turning that we need to get to and from the site. So it definitely operates safely and efficiently.
I'm sorry.
No. So I have a question because I'm not very familiar other than Mickey D's. Do you foresee any issues with folks coming out of the office complex, looking at Route 9, saying, "Osh, I can't sit here," and making a left on a Northwoods and then a right onto Woodland Drive and finagling their way?
Yeah, but it's landlocked.
Is it? I don't know that area, so.
You can't get to Aldridge. It doesn't.
It's all landlocked.
So you're just
so,
lost back there, and then you end
to
up back in
further
the same
that,
spot.
I don't think we have an issue signing it that says no left turn, right? I mean,
Okay.
there may be an employee or two that if
Sure,
something
yeah.
happens, but I don't think, it's a great point.
Well, they
We
can
don't,
go back there and just drive around a circle and come
We
back.
don't want to go in that
We
direction
don't
because
want that.
you can't get out. So I think, signing it for no left turn or striping, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that would have to be a stipulation to consider it, yeah.
It wasn't something I was thinking about, but absolutely.
Your bigger issue at that U-turn, coming into it, like say a tractor trailer that came around and lined itself up to go to 9 south. Right, came around. There isn't a huge difference, a huge gap from the light, like it's maybe 6 or 7 cars before, there's a gas station right there on the left-hand side. Before, like, how it's double laned, to go right or go left.
Yeah.
There's not a huge gap there for,
But
I'm
we
not saying
have
there's
to
gonna be a ton of
discuss-
tractor trailers, I'm
No.
just saying, that's where it could bottleneck up a little bit, or people coming out of Northwoods, coming out of their development, they're gonna hit that.
But again, just to focus this, like, we can't, we're not trying to solve Route 9's problems here.
No, we can't.
You know what I mean? It's the ingress egress of this project.
Yeah.
End of
Try
story.
not to make them worse. yeah.
Right, so,
I'm just saying. that
we all understand Route 9 stinks.
Distance is not just, it's not a great.
Correct.
Same with Stanley Boulevard.
Right.
When you go around that U-turn and you're coming in,
But it's,
or left or right, there's not a huge distance.
right.
For them to move, like when you come off 195,
Yep.
to get on 9.
Okay.
That's all we have on.
All right, guys, anything? Jen, Laura?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure, just as a follow-up to some of the questions that were asked, was the board requesting that the applicant return sort of to run their model sort of in a visual
Yeah, I wanted
manner
to
for
see
the
if they
board?
could provide some supplementary figures, like even just screenshots showing the queue, because it's a very powerful tool. I mean, I am an engineer, and we design interchanges for highways, and to see the actual queue, looking at all the different movements, it helps us understand when you say it's negligible impact or it's a minor impact. Those are very subjective terms, but when we could see, the line of traffic extends by 100 feet or 100 yards or 500 yards, or it stays the same and it's a wash because of the gap at Aldrich Road, it would help us kind of wrap our heads around the actual impacts.
So if it, we absolutely can provide that. I can tell you, it's one of the things I brought with me was just the numbers, right? So if we're talking about the queues on these eastbound and westbound approaches, right? Because the queue on Route 9 is a queue on Route 9, and it extends all the way up to Stewart's, right? I mean, but if we're talking about the queues on the eastbound and westbound approaches, in the morning, you have an average queue of 25 feet, right? So about a car in either lane. When we're done, it'll go to 63 feet, right? So that's the addition of about 2 cars per cycle length. In the evening, it goes from 28 feet to 35 feet on the eastbound approach. So that's coming into the site, right, on Stanley. If we're looking at the westbound approach, it goes in the morning from 20 to 31, and in the PM, understandably, it goes from 46 to 123 feet, okay? Now, 123 feet is about where the jug handle ramp comes out of, onto Northwoods Place. So what we found was, like I said, that was what the DOT was concerned, and one of the concerns we
So
had
those
too.
are the east-west queues. What are the north-south Route 9 queues, the lengths of
I
those?
mean, honestly, it's probably almost incalculable in the southbound, but I can give you those numbers. Let's see. No bill, AM. You go, yeah, right, I mean, it's giving me about 150 feet, which obviously coming southbound is it's not correct, right? I mean, it's a function of the amount of volume that can get through, as opposed to the queue
Probably
that's spilling
closer to a
back.
quarter mile.
Yeah, we have 350, but relatively impact, it goes from 350 to 548, so about 200 feet increase with essentially it's the reduction in green time, because we're not really adding traffic to the southbound approach in the evening. So you're at about 200 feet.
75%.
I don't know if that answers the
No,
question.
I mean,
there.
that's what the visual aid would have accomplished, is really to see the queues. So it's essentially like a 75-80% increase in the north-south.
we want to give the board whatever you need to make an intelligent decision.
No, I appreciate the explanation.
So whatever you'll have to let us know if you need more information. Our position is, the test really is, does our driveway operate safely officially? Route 9 is what it is. We can't, as indicated, we can't fix Route 9.
Does that fall under a negative impact, though, from a planning perspective, or am I reaching here?
Well, it would have to be associated with a variance.
Okay.
If it's not associated with a variance, then you're not looking at that, but you are looking at what we've said before, which is the safety of the ingress and egress.
Gotcha.
All right, Sal, anything else?
We have a planner for
Rob,
that.
I mean, for traffic?
Justin, no,
All right.
you want to open?
Yeah, I'll open it up to the public now. Ma'am, do you have anything for, just questions at this time for, you can come on up.
You have to come to the mic?
Yeah. It's not, it's just questions for Justin here regarding traffic.
Okay, ma'am, when you get up, if you could just state and spell your name and give us your address.
Diane Workman, 75 Crest Drive, Howell Township.
And can you just spell your last name for us?
Excuse me?
Just spell your last name.
Workman.
Okay, thank you, Diane.
And I know I've been in development for over 53 years when it was first built. They closed off a lot of the entrances and exits to the development because of the traffic on Route 9. And I sort of wonder, as the traffic, will they cut off another entrance or exit to the development because of this? I don't know.
You know what she's talking about? You know where the eye doctor is?
Yes, behind.
Yeah, that one and the one on where you have the winding thing to go on to I-95.
Well, that's it. That's what they're talking about here.
Those are the only two ways out of our development. We have like 32
Off.
houses.
They're not cutting off the access. They're cutting off the ramp, but you could still go to the light and make a right.
But you're going to have a lot more traffic.
I'm not saying that, but the first question was, are they cutting off any more access points?
Well, maybe if they have to widen the roads for the traffic, they might have to. That's what happened on Aldridge Road. The roads, when I was there, it was only one lane and one lane.
Well, why
And then
don't you ask
You should ask
Mr.
him.
Taylor?
Ask
Can you
Mr.
answer
Taylor.
that?
As the years went on, and they had to widen the roads for the traffic, they cut off our exit to get out of the development because they couldn't, there was no way of people going out.
So I would say that we have no proposed modifications to the northwards approach other than the slip ramp and turning that into the driveway. I would also further say that given the environmental constraints and the residential development, there's no other development that's going on in this location that's going to impact that approach.
But it's already impacted now, so if you have extra people coming in, you're really not going to be able to get out of the development.
I would say based on the analysis that we did and the trip generation associated with the proposed development and the allocation of green time that I was mentioning with the actuated signal, I don't think that it's going to impact that approach. I really don't. I think you're going to find you're waiting the same amount of time to get out as you do today.
I don't know, I hope you're right, but I don't know about that. And I know the other development, the other way out where you hit Route 9, and you can only go south on Route, north on Route 9, that's going to get really jammed up because people are going to try to go out that way if going around that ramp is hard to get to.
Mr. Chairman, this is sort of getting into testimony now.
Yeah, this is just for questions. Well, you could certainly do this later, but this is just for questions for the engineer,
All right,
but yeah.
that was-
Okay, thank you very much. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Could you just state your name?
My name is Jason Storch, S-T-O-R-C-H. I'm at 77 Crest Drive in Howell.
Thank you.
I had some question about the data, like how you collected the data. You said peak hours. You said it, and the study was from 2024?
Yep, the most recent data that we collected is from 2024.
Do you have like a date range that you collected that data, like?
Sure. We counted the second time. We counted back in 2022, as I mentioned, but we wanted to make sure that things have been updated and we weren't dealing with COVID impact. The most recent date that we collected was November 13th, 2024.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is it might not be a particular busy time of the year, such as like in the summertime, I know we get a lot more traffic in that area, and it does back up. And, so that, I'm skeptical when you say 180 cars out of the 400, coming in and it not backing up, because we already experienced that in the summer. And have you done any simulations in the summertime specifically, how the traffic will be further backed up?
So we did not count in the summertime. We counted, like I said, this most recent in November, and I think the ones in 2022 were probably mid, do I have it? It might have even been January. Give me a sec. But what I would say is the volume that we're talking about, the volume coming out of Northwoods, right, out of the residential development there, doesn't vary much seasonally, right? People are still going to work at the same time. They're still going. And the summer traffic that you see in this area predominantly happens to be an increase on the weekends, right? Or on a Friday evening. You have a little bit more people going to the restaurants up and down, on a weeknight. But predominantly during those peak commuting hours, we don't see that much variation in this section of Route 9. So I don't see it changing the output of the side street operation that we came up with. Right, Route 9 might be a little bit busier, but
But you're not basing that on data.
I'm basing that, my opinion, that the volumes coming to and from the residential development and our side of Route 9 don't vary much because of the seasonal nature of it.
You're not basing that on data, though.
I'm basing that on my professional opinion, and
Because I don't have data either on this summer, but I just have my experience, and that, that's why I was wondering if you did collect data in the summer to see, because we are seeing an increase in volume of cars during that time.
Yep.
And it does back up. And you're telling us that there's going to be an increase
So which
with the office building, but it's not going to back up.
what are you talking about backup? When
The, bottleneck
on Northwoods?
on Route 9.
Well, that's correct,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, Route 9 is the elephant in the room. It is what it is, right? The additional traffic that we're talking about coming to and from the site isn't really going to be noticeable in that Route 9 traffic flow, right? Because it's going to be part of the existing queues that are out there, right? And again, it comes down to the fact that this corridor probably needs to be looked at from a DOT standpoint as a regional corridor and figure out, my opinion, just from driving and living in the area, is Aldrich Road is what's bottlenecking that whole thing. Once you get through there, you get down to Friendship, it starts to open up, right, until you get down into Lakewood.
That might be the cause of the problem, but it seems to me adding 200 cars a day is going to make it worse.
Mr. Chair, if I could, there's just
Sure.
a couple of things I want to note, maybe for the public and maybe for the board to kind of ponder.
Sure.
What I heard is that this is a Monday through Friday operation from 9 to 5. That's what I heard.
Correct.
As the hours of operation. Other permitted uses that could go here include healthcare facilities, medical centers, hospitals, restaurants without drive-through, restaurants with drive-through, takeout, entertainment uses, retail sales, retail services, home improvement centers, adult daycares, indoor recreation, microbreweries, schools. And so I just, I understand what the board and what the comments we're hearing, but as was kind of indicated, our focus on this is on the access and whether or not access to the site functions safely. Not necessarily the traffic on Route 9. Unfortunately, that's out of our jurisdiction. I think if you all could petition for things to be different on Route 9, you would. You live it. We all drive this every day. My office is just down the road. One thing I would say that I didn't hear that I do think creates a safer condition is I don't know that it's safe right now to have that Northwood slip ramp also become the slip ramp from Route 9 to get onto 195. It functions as one loop, but certainly traffic that's coming down Route 9 would be merging over. So I did just want to note that, but I did just also want to kind of walk the board through. I understand the traffic, and I think we have to be sure that we know that the access drive functions safely and appropriately. But I also think hearing the testimony, if this is a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 operation, I think that the board, if I were to make a recommendation, that would be how, if you were to approve this, this is how you approve it. You limit the hours of operation to that, so that there's not weekend peak. Yes, you're going to have the AM peak and the PM peak, but if this was a strip mall, I think we'd have substantial impact. If this was a medical center, I think we'd have substantial impact. So I think when you're weighing these uses, and remember, it's a permitted use in the zone. So I did just kind of want to take the board back to that. Listen, we all acknowledge that there's a problem. I'd also say, Mr. Taylor indicated he's going to talk to the DOT. We need to petition the DOT to look at the signalization of these lights. That's a big issue out there. And that would be something I would also recommend that the board consider. But I just want to take us back to really what our scope or focus needs to be.
Mr. Taylor, also, just to follow up, one of the questions about when the traffic counts were taken. There was a question as to whether it was done in, any of the counts over the period of time was done in the summertime or performed in the summertime. Were there any counts in the summertime?
No, there were not.
Okay. Aside from the count you're talking about in November, what were I think you referenced that there were some other counts along the way?
We had done counts initially when we started the project back in 2022. Just give me 1 second and I'll tell you.
2022 was like post-COVID, when people were just getting back to work slowly.
And that's why he updated them to
Yep.
make sure.
To November.
I will tell you,
Okay.
we did them in January of 2022, and then went through a COVID adjustment factor that DOT had prescribed when we did it. But it's one of the reasons I wanted to get new data, because obviously, it was projections at that point, and wanted to get something as current as we could coming to see you guys.
So the question also, it's not like, a particular holiday, like Christmas or something like that. It was a question about a season. Do you find as a professional traffic engineer that there are seasonal differences in the traffic that would encumber that area?
I think during the commuting hours, the variations from November to, say, the middle of summer aren't going to be enough to impact the operation of the driveway or of the two side street approaches that we really concerned about getting people to and from the site.
So when you say they wouldn't be enough, what would be the variation, or what would you estimate the variation to be?
Probably 10 to 15% potentially. On the side streets, it's probably less than that, because again, the people that are coming out of the residential development are going to work in the morning and coming home in the evening, whether it's summertime or wintertime. So those are the vehicles that we're turning against to get to and from the site.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really see much of a seasonal variation.
And then, just to follow up on Laura's point, if this is a use that's going to be operating between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, do you find that even in the summertime, that those would be the hours where you would experience the heavy traffic in that area? Or would it be, more weekend and, maybe Friday later?
That's exactly it. I would say that the weekends are much more, see a much greater increase of seasonal variation, and that Friday evening, correct. So no, I don't see the rest of the day when the normal operation of an office building is going to see as much seasonal variation.
And Mr. Alfieri, I don't know what the ordinance provides, but being that your traffic testimony seems to be based upon a very particular use operating between very particular hours, would the applicant take that as a condition if there were to be an approval?
I haven't talked to him, so Laura did suggest that, but I haven't turned around to speak to him yet.
Okay.
And the other thing I would note, Mr. Chairman, is at least school is in session November 13th. So sometimes when we take seasonal counts in the summer, and, I work for varying municipalities, I don't see a ton of shore traffic necessarily through Howell, as I do in other areas where it is kind of critical to take a summer count. What I find this board finds most critical is, was school in session or was school not in session, as well as Ron indicated it didn't conflict with any holidays.
But Justin, like, the counts, what you're saying, 9 of them, what you say, 7:30 to 9:30?
So we look at a 2-hour window in the morning and the 2-hour.
2-hour, but you also got to understand too, because that development is landlocked, when the buses enter that development in the morning, you know, we have the middle school, or elementaries, middle, high school. So high school's first, middle second, elementary third, plus whatever else. You got different times of buses coming out of that place, out of the Carroll Lane and all that, not Carroll. They would be in your. Rustic and all that.
Northwoods at that intersection.
Yes, you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about, okay? So, of course, the morning, that's what I'm saying, I don't agree with your times. I think it needs to be a little earlier. It is what it is.
So,
Yeah.
What are the peaks? Did you do manual counts or did you have counters?
I had manual counts. I had people, boots
So you
on
had
the ground.
people
sitting
out there,
Yep,
right?
yes.
So when you're saying things like peak hour, you're not talking about the peak hour of this particular use. You're looking at the peak hour on the road, right?
That's correct.
And what was the AM peak?
So the AM peak was from 7:30 to 8:30, right? So we counted 7 to 9. The highest hour within that 2-hour window was 7:30 to 8:30.
And what's the PM peak?
4:45 to 5:45.
So when you did the counts from 7 to 9 in the morning, which is really more the school stuff, right? I would not say the PM peak coincides with school dismissal, right? They're out before the.
3 o'clock, 3:30.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So when you did the counts in the AM peak, you accounted for bus
Absolutely.
traffic?
And so what we do is we separate larger vehicles, right? We count passenger cars as one type of classification, school buses and box trucks is another, and then tractor trailers is a third. Because each one of them have different turning characteristics, and all that gets boiled into the model when we build it, because it takes a little longer for a tractor trailer to accelerate. He takes a little bit longer time to get through the intersection. So the school buses that go into the neighborhood are accounted for in that analysis.
Jen, I think the bigger issue for the residents that came up here, obviously, that are gonna exit out onto.
I agree. They're worried
You're worried
that
about
they're
that.
gonna get backed up.
You're gonna get backed up all the way to your, to Rustic or.
Well, what will happen is that because there's gonna be this backup on Northwoods, they're gonna use that other access to Route 9 to get out of the development. What is it?
It's only northbound anyway. So.
Well, that I know, but I'm just saying, I mean, they could, in theory, use this jug handle and get back in the traffic, but,
I understand her concern. It's more the U-turn, like the chairman said. It's really more the 2 U-turns, which we have no control over. It's just, that's where all the congestion's gonna come from.
did you do an analysis, a stacking analysis at that intersection, at the AM and PM peak?
Yes, those are the cues that I quoted. We looked at what was stacking there, and then I went back out actually this morning and last night to, again, verify the numbers that I was getting directly from my counters. And I didn't see any more than 2 or 3 cars on either one of the approaches during either one of those peak hours, right? And so what that means is there's plenty of room for the cars that we would be surcharging on the intersection.
So, Mr. Leggi, I think to your point, for that particular issue with respect to the residents being able to like exit the neighborhood, it's really more the PM peak that you're concerned about because that's when the cars are leaving.
Oh, but yeah,
Right, I mean, because the AM peak, they're theoretically already there and they're going opposite.
It's the opposite.
Right.
Yeah, like I'm not worried. The morning is really not my concern because, people leave for work at different times.
Right.
These people are gonna be coming in, from whatever direction, Justin, okay? Different times, 9, 10, 11, whatever, it's the PM.
It's the dumping of everyone out at like, well, I know, because my office closes at 4:30 and at 4:30 and 5 seconds, the parking lot's empty.
That place is crazy, that
Right.
intersection with Stanley Boulevard and that, it's coming off of 195 from the west and the, Laura,
Yeah.
if you're coming down 9, headed to Tom's River, so we're just trying to, you understand, Justin?
I do, absolutely.
Justin, after COVID, did any of the calculations, I guess, was there a change or anything as far as like flexible work schedule? Was that factored into any of your calculations of how the office dynamic has changed over time?
It's a great question, and the answer to that is yes. The 11th edition of Trip Generation, now you know what, before I quote that to you, I believe the 11th edition of Trip Generation takes into account additional data that was collected. I know the 12th edition is due out, any month now from IT, which will then further reinforce that characteristic. But I'm not 100% sure whether the 11th edition, which is what we're currently using now, and To further that, I would tell you it probably does not, because the NJDOT is behind everything in trying to update their data so I would actually probably tell you that it's not inclusive in that trip generation. So there is the potential that the numbers I have are even a little conservative.
Yeah, it's kind of an oddball question when you're looking to develop office space and then talking about flexible work schedule and not being in the office, so.
What we found is that it is like, as we're counting other locations, and it hasn't maybe processed all the way into the ITE, is that you do see a little bit of reduction but you also see people with flexible workspaces, right? So maybe you don't take 20,000, you only take 15,000 because you have multiple people on different days using the same workstation. So there was a drastic drop in that very post-COVID, and more things are trending now to getting rid of the flexible work.
Okay.
But Chairman, as far as what Laura said, okay, and the residents that are here, if you're gonna pick the lesser evil to build here, with the permitted uses that could go there, so take that into consideration, living there, okay? I live off of Salem Hill. This is the lesser evil that could go there for you guys. If it was a strip mall, school, any, a lot of traffic coming in and out all day, that would really aggravate the hell out of everybody back there. So this is, and I appreciate Laura bringing that up, and, so as far as us board members, you know what I mean? If something was gonna go up on Salem Hill where I live, this is something that, I would rather have this than a strip mall or Home Depot, another Home Depot. Or a hospital. A hospital, or, whatever, I just,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
You can't.
But we can't, there's going to be a public portion. We have to wait for the public
And
portion.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to respond to Laura's question about the hours of operation. We're not willing to say this place will only operate from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday because my office, I have people working until 7 o'clock at night. I'm not going to throw everybody out at 5.
Your associates may want to move to this office.
You're right, maybe, with a pay reduction. But on top of that, if someone's working at 8 o'clock, the traffic is far different. It's not like everybody's showing up at 8 p.m. The 9 to 5 is the primary, that's why we use those peak hours. That's where the primary traffic is. The rest of the time is far less traffic, far less activity. Excuse me. If a doctor, if a lawyer's office wants to open on a Saturday morning to do a closing, it's not like all 400 bases are filled with lawyers doing closings. So we're talking about peak hours. Those are the peak hours that we focused on.
So, Mr. Alfieri, when you're talking office, and I know there was testimony from your architect that this is Class A office, and I know this is kind of a circuitous way to get to you, Justin, but I am getting to you, is that, are you stipulating that this is going to be professional office only, or could the potential be medical office, because that changes the dynamic of what we're talking about?
We've analyzed, all of our data is based on professional office.
So
and not
professional
medical
office.
That's correct.
So not medical, Ron?
And then, just again, to focus the board, and the planner will get up and reinforce this, under the Dunkin' Donuts case, because we're permitted uses, you're really supposed to focus on our driveway to get the people onto the road safely. Once they get onto the road, we have no control over it. And I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but and I understand the concerns, but that's really what our goal is, and our obligation is to get them onto the road, period.
What's professional office?
Like Laura's office, my office.
But do we, in our ordinance, right, but in our ordinance, do we have
We distinguish between professional office and medical office. There's even 2 different parking requirements for both.
Okay.
It could be an insurance agent, it could be any type of business other than medical, which has a higher parking.
Much higher parking demand for medical, because there's more in and out.
Okay.
Hey, Justin, I know this is kind of off the topic a little bit. Can you tell me the distance from the intersection to the driveway?
It is approximately 200 feet.
So how many cars, average-sized cars, could stack before it blocked the driveway?
You can probably have 16 cars with the 2 lanes.
I'm just saying
That's so
a
if we
distance,
do
so 8 cars.
About 8 cars, right?
8 cars.
Your average car is about 16 feet, and people leave a little bit of room. Typically use between 20 and 25 in a module. So you're probably about 8 cars, maybe 10 cars.
Thank you.
Anything else?
One last witness?
Yeah, Sal, I think we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
All right?
There's a member of the public that has one more question for you.
The planning board will now reconvene.
Mr. Chair, during the break, a member of the public had asked if there was the ability to come up and ask Justin a question before we moved on to another witness.
Sure.
Now's the time.
Would you like to come up? Yeah, come on up. Good evening. Could you just state your name and address, please?
Yep, it's Brian Cullen, Cullen, 79 Crest Drive.
Thanks, Brian.
My question is, when I come out of the development from Northwoods and want to make a right, you have I guess it's like a teardrop circle there. It's got a corner.
That's correct.
Trying to make a right-hand turn.
Yep.
Like I actually argued this when they built down in front of Candlewood. It was the same deal. Coming out of there, trying to make a right-hand turn, wasn't really built to do that.
That's a great question.
And then you also have the straight trucks or the school buses coming out of there, which is even worse. They've got to go across at least, 2 lanes to make a right-hand turn?
So what needs to be kept in mind, it's something that the DOT had a concern of. It's something we looked at. We ran turning templates to ensure that it would work. In this location, because you have the teardrop, the far side jug handle, you're not turning into the lane right on the curb, right? You're turning into a lane that's 12 to 15 feet further into Route 9. And so both the passenger vehicles can do it, the school buses can do it, and the single unit trucks can do it. It's something, because if they couldn't, DOT was going to make us widen that radius. And they determined that it was not necessary.
Explain that to me again. When you're making the right-hand turn, I'm not really going into what lane?
So I guess this is part of the site plan set.
Yep.
So if you're turning here, as you turn right, you're not turning into the curbside lane. You have the lane that feeds the jug handle.
Okay.
So you're turning to the right lane on Route 9 North. So you have an extra 15 feet
Coming
to
out
turn
further.
into.
I get it. Okay. Yeah, it's still tight. And you can see even now, you look at the curve now, it's completely bashed apart because people make that right-hand turn. It's a little tight still. And with school buses too, that's a little too tight. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Sal. Thanks, Justin.
Yep.
Christine?
Christine, welcome back.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Hi, good evening. For the record, Christine Cofone, C-O-F-O-N-E. Business address is 52 Reckless Place, Red Bank, New Jersey, 07701. Testifying as a licensed professional planner.
Thank you.
And your credentials are okay?
Good.
All right, Christine.
So you've heard a lot of testimony tonight, so I don't want to belabor the point that this is an as-of-right use, right? Ms. Newman went and read through the permitted uses, and she stopped at schools, and there's even more than that. In addition to the list that she read, there are craft distilleries, assisted living facilities, self-storage facilities, and then conditionally, house of worship is allowed, auto sales, auto services, auto auctions, car washes, telecommunications. So this is what I would consider a permissive commercial district, right? And then the stated purpose at section 188-77 of the HD1 zone is to provide for highway-oriented development in the Route 9 corridor on lots larger than permitted in the HC zone. So when you look up at the screen, you see, and you heard testimony from Ryan, our site engineer, that this is a large site, but substantial portions of it are constrained. Specifically, the eastern portion of the site is encumbered by wetlands, flood hazard areas, and for that reason, it renders that portion of the site undevelopable. So as I told you in my credentials in the earlier application, I teach planning and zoning courses. So if I were trying to use a textbook C1 site, I would pick this. I would use this as a great demonstration as to features on a piece of property that are constraining and restricting the development. So that is forcing the development to the south and western portion of the site because that's where the site is not constrained. And that is why we were seeking the relief along the southern portion for the retaining walls, for the buffers, and to have the parking in that area. So I think that portion of the relief anyway is at least justifiable under the C1 section of the statute. In addition to that relief, we are seeking relief for 49.1, as our architect told you, where the HD1 restricts to 45 feet. As he said, our buildings are going to be treated on all four sides, and I wrote down the fact that Jennifer used the word, I believe it was fantastic, for the architecture. So I do find that to be a bit of a holiday miracle. It doesn't happen often. So I think that I need to regurgitate that testimony here. You heard it, I heard it. But really the important point is here, we're asking you for a little additional height on the structures, but they are attractive structures. Our team took pretty good care to go through and make sure they were treated on all four sides. I know this board has had applications come before you where you have requested that, and I think that the board can look at that, together with the fact that Building A is set back almost 190 feet from the edge of pavement, and then Building B is sort of tucked back there in a less visible location. So for those reasons, I think the board could look at the C2 section of the statute, advancing criteria I, a desirable visual environment, and that certainly that there is criteria G, sufficient space in an appropriate location for the grant of that relief. So I think that this is a substantially conforming application with the HD1. In the master plan, it is encouraged specifically under the comprehensive objectives to encourage the redevelopment or revitalization of vacant or underutilized properties, right? So this is a vacant lot on the Route 9 highway corridor, and a list of extensive permitted uses are permissible here. So I do think that the variance relief is reasonable with respect to the context of the site. I think, I should also talk about the sign height. That to me is a clear C2. I think the sign height, if you give us the relief to exceed the height of it that is permissible to be placed at, I think it fits better with the building. So if the board is so inclined, I think that section of the relief would fall under the C2. Again, being a better zoning alternative, advancing criteria I. Going back to the fact that this is a permitted use in the zone, and you've heard, us and other applicants, I'm sure, rely on the Dunkin' Donuts case because we can't be asking applicants for as-of-right uses to solve the problems of the existing traffic systems. We have to get our traffic on our site safely and efficiently, and we certainly do that. So I think when you look at the structure of the ordinance, this is an as-of-right use here, so I see no reason to restrict the hours of operation for this use, and I think that we certainly meet our statutory burden of proof with respect to the positive and negative criteria, and the negative criteria can be granted with no substantial detriment.
That's all we have with planning.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Jennifer? Laura?
I don't take exception to the testimony. I think the other thing that's important to note is that I agree there are environmental issues on the site, which push the development to the northern portion of the site. It's important to also note that 195 is significantly elevated as one of the boundaries of this property. So, yes, they are asking for a C variance for height, and there are different degrees of height variance. If you're more than 10 feet or 10%, they would be at the zoning board. They're below that threshold, so they're able to get a C variance for the height. But they're up against an elevated state high, like interstate highway. So if this was somewhere else, I might have a different opinion on the relief, especially requested for the height. But given the fact that it's as far away from the neighborhood and tucked against the 195 elevated highway, I don't have a problem with the relief requested. I do also agree that the buffer relief that they asked for, which I typically, I'm a staunch advocate of the buffers, but here it's really the retaining wall and the road, most of which is already there. But it's really given the unique constraints, and it's on the Route 9 frontage. And I can tell you that we have been working internally to look at perhaps the appropriateness of maintaining that buffer across Route 9, which is like 100 and some odd feet wide. So in that regard, I wouldn't take any exception, and I already talked to you guys about the sign height, that I think how it fits on the building. As long as the size of the sign is compliant, which I think they testified to it would be, I don't take exception to the increase in the mounting height.
Thank you. Laura, anything?
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing additional at this time. They've adequately addressed my report and indicated they would comply with all technical comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I'll open it up to the public for any questions of the planner. I think there's only 3. Seeing none, close the public portion. Oh, Joe, go ahead.
So I see on the map that you supplied, the flood hazard area line in red goes straight across your driveway. Is that a low point?
We'd have to bring the
Our
civil-
engineer
our
for that.
engineer up. He could, Ryan?
I'll tap Ryan in. Thank you. Sorry, you were not, sorry.
Yeah. Ryan McDermott, MCDER-MOTT, civil engineering consultant on behalf of the applicant. So I believe the question was about the flood hazard area on the particularly southwesterly portion of the parcel. You're correct, it does run under that ramp. So the stream feature, the Plover's Brook tributary, you can almost see it on this page. It's piped under that ramp. So yes, that is a low portion of the site.
So let's just say you have 400 spaces, a few hundred of them are filled, and you get torrential downpours. Is that going to affect the drive in or out?
No, and the reason I say no is because we worked extensively with the DEP to get our individual permit for just that reason. So the DEP specifically reviewed our stormwater management design.
Okay.
Good?
Yeah, good.
All right, gentlemen, anything else?
And you're confident as far as what's it called?
Tributaries, yes.
That water will stay, because the building is off of it. This is not gonna push any of this water, if it was the high water table, out onto Northwood's place out there?
That's correct, yeah. That's the primary reason why our development is pushed to the north end of the site.
Thank you.
All right, Sal.
That concludes our presentation. I request that you open up to the public for comment.
Yeah, if there's any comment.
Well, before we do that,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, just in terms of the discussion on the traffic earlier, I mean, is there a request that the applicant return with, more detailed visual presentation of the traffic counts, or is the board satisfied with what it's heard tonight?
No, we're satisfied. His explanation with the queue lengths and the stack, that was essentially what that would have done. So,
Okay.
Yep.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, yep, this is for come on up again.
Okay, this
Yeah,
time,
you have to stand
this
up to
time
the-
when you get up, because you're testifying, I'm going to have to swear you in, so we'll just have to start with that. So if you could raise your
All right.
right hand. Ma'am, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole
Yes.
truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
If you could just state your name and address again.
Diane Workman, 75 Crest Drive, Howell Township.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
As far as the wetlands go, my property is like, I have 17 acres of woods in back of my property. And the wetlands are really wet. Right now, we're in a drought, so everything is is okay. It's muddy, but it's okay. But when we have rain, that water really comes up. I mean, you can step in real puddles of water. For sure, it won't get worse. I don't want to have my house flooded out.
Yeah, so with respect to the wetlands you're talking about, any negative impacts would be associated with the stormwater management design, and we go through a very, very strict set of regulations, both on the local and state level, where we need regulated approvals. So in working with Laura's office, we would make sure that we provide a compliant stormwater design from a local ordinance perspective, but we've already received approval from the DEP specifically with respect to our disturbances to the wetlands and the flood hazard area.
If we were to have any severe flooding after this is done, what can we do?
Howell Township Engineering Department.
Okay.
Ryan, your property's down gradient, correct?
Of,
of Crest Drive.
it is, yes. So it would be,
towards Route 9, away from her property.
correct.
Okay, so, all right.
It
Just
all
wanna
goes
make
towards
sure.
the streams on our site as well.
All right.
Good. Thank you. Gentlemen, do you have anything? No? Okay. Close the public portion. Sal, any closing?
Yeah, very
remarks?
briefly.
Sure.
This isn't, obviously a severely constrained site. There's only one possible access point to the site for it to be developed in any way. As you heard testimony from our planner and from your engineer, this is probably the best use for this location, with a multiple of other far more intense uses. Our test under Dunkin' Donuts is to the access point of our site, whether it operates safely and efficiently. Our testimony was clear that it does. We understand the Route 9 testimony, which was the primary focus of the board's questions and the traffic engineer's comments. We still think, even though it's really not relevant to the application, we think he adequately addressed those comments. And we've also agreed to address all the technical comments contained within the board professional reports, your fire officials report, and we request that the board grant the approval as requested.
And where do we stand on sidewalks?
We agreed to provide the sidewalks on Route 9.
Okay.
And the other thing, I guess, we need your input on, someone suggested the no left turn sign leaving.
Yeah.
We'd agree to that if that's what you want.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, gentlemen, at this time, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make motion for approval.
All right, Mr. Cristiano has made a motion to approve this application. Do I have a second? I will second.
Vote. Mr. Cristiano?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Mr. Rebel?
Yes.
Mr. Carbonic?
Yes.
And Chairman Husser?
Yes.
Motion carries. Application approved.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great holiday.
Thank you, too, Sal. Jennifer, any master plan update?
Nothing for today, but the board should be aware that we're gearing up for the next round of affordable housing, which is really starting in January, which will ultimately result in a housing element and fair share plan of our master plan, probably around June of next year. So just to put you guys on notice, we've gotten our number, we're starting to look at things, but ultimately we have to have the housing element and fair share plan done by June 30th, so.
So that'll be the focus 2025?
Yes,
Got
so
it.
that's kind of where we're headed.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ron, is there any reason to go into executive session?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
What about the,
Second.
we already did the master plan?
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Good, all right. Thank you very much.